Good evening, Rockville. Today is November 3rd, 2025, and we're beginning meeting 26-25. Colleagues, please join me as you're able, as well as those in the room and those watching online, in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So today is a special day. We do once a month recognitions and proclamations, and my colleagues and I have a couple of things to celebrate with the entire Rockville community today. So I'll ask my colleagues, please join me in the front, and we will begin. Okay. Good evening, everyone. The first recognition is to declare November 2025 as Municipal Government Works Month in Rockville. I just wanted to pause and say we have some incredible staff here in the city of Rockville. They do things that we don't even know and see behind the scenes, from making sure that our water systems are safe to making sure that our community is safe as we traverse, whether that's Rockville City Police Departments or Public Works or planning. There are just so many people who are quietly doing what is needed to make it such a high quality community. And so today we celebrate them, our everyday heroes of Rockville. Whereas the city of Rockville was incorporated in 1860, and Maryland is home to 156 other municipalities, municipal governments represent the most responsive form of government, with individuals being able to directly access their elected officials and staff. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim and join the Maryland Municipal League in declaring the month of November 2025 as Municipal Government Works Month in Rockville, Maryland. And we encourage everyone across Rockville to join folks across the United States to recognize and participate in this special observance. Councilmember Van Grack moves the proclamation. Councilmember Fulton seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Excellent. I would like to welcome Linda Moran. She is the assistant to the city manager. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council and community. As the city staff liaison to the Maryland Municipal League, I'm just very pleased to accept this proclamation. It's a wonderful organization, and it highlights all of the wonderful things that local governments and their communities do together. Thank you. Oh, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have the proclamation in honor of Hospice and Palliative Care Month. This is a proclamation that is very close to my heart. My father utilized the wonderful and compassionate services of Montgomery Hospice toward the end of his life. And when you have a chronic illness, you spend a lot of your life kind of thinking about the way in which your life will cease to be, and a lot of time talking it through. And I found that hospice care and palliative care both really show a tremendous respect and a tremendous compassion and a wonderful approach toward helping people to ease on in the next journey of life, and I'm really profoundly glad for that. Whereas for more than 40 years, hospice has helped provide comfort and dignity to millions of people, allowing them to spend their final months at home, surrounded by the people important to them. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and Council of Rockville, Maryland do hereby proclaim November 2025 as National Hospice and Palliative Care Month and encourage all residents to increase their knowledge about person-centered, holistic care for all individuals facing serious and life-limiting illness, discuss their healthcare wishes with those they care about, and mark this month with appropriate learning, sharing, caring, and outreach. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Councilman Jackson seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. And we have Karen Brubaker Miller. Is she here from Montgomery Hospice? Wonderful organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Here you go. If you want to say it.
Sure. Yes, thank you so much. So, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Such an honor to be here on behalf of our organization, Montgomery and Prince George's Hospice. And we've served this community for nearly 45 years. We serve all patients, eligible patients, regardless of ability to pay, which is more important than ever in these times we're living through. So I can't describe hospice better than what a beautiful introduction. But basically, our team brings expert care and kindness and compassion to the bedside. We bring light on the darkest nights to people who are facing serious and terminal illness. And we bring help and hope to the people who love and care for them. Thank you for your support. Thank you for this beautiful recognition that you value and celebrate hospice and palliative care. So, thank you. It's lovely. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for coaching me. I'll take it. Thank you. Wow. I don't even need to speak up.
I appreciate what you do so much.
So I know I talked last month about Indigenous people, but this upcoming November, this month, we're actually celebrating Native American Heritage Month. And it's important because, as we often say during our meetings, we are not the indigenous people of this land. It's important not only to give respect to those who were here before us, but understand their heritage and how much they've influenced us and our society and what they've given to us. Whereas Native Americans were first to carve out cities, domestic crops, and establish great civilizations. And now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim November 28th, 2025 as Native American Heritage Day and November 2025 as Native American Heritage Month, and urge all members of the community to commemorate this month with appropriate programs and activities. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Thank you. Councilmember Shaw seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. So I don't believe we have anybody here to accept the proclamation, but I know we'll post it online so everybody knows about it.
Good evening. How y'all doing? Good. Thanks for coming out. It's such a beautiful day outdoors. Sometimes I wish we can have our meetings outside. In another lifetime, we'll see. I'll thank you for the honor of being able to present or speak on the proclamation declaring November as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. I stood up here last year, about a year ago, to do this proclamation and inform folks that I lost my grandfather to pancreatic cancer about 5 years prior to that. Within weeks of giving the proclamation last year, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And within a few months, she passed. Thankfully, it was peaceful. We had Montgomery Hospice work with us. Y'all got us to the hospital bed in one day. That was pretty impressive, in addition to all the services, the late night calls, bedside visits. But needless to say, it was surprising to us. She was 67 years old, no medical history, takes no medications. She had actually less gray hair on her head than me. I verified that when we cut it for when she began chemotherapy. She did several rounds, and the side effects were significant. So a decision was made to focus on the quality of life. She did that with us. Despite, some would argue, being given a kind of a raw deal, she was a public school teacher. So she had a lesson plan not only for her celebration of life, but also for how we should think about not only her, but just how to move through life. I think it's particularly relevant now. The first, she said, is keep it positive. There's so much going on, particularly now. A lot of doom and gloom, but she strived to keep it positive. Second, keep on living. It can be difficult. I think one of the things that when you care for somebody, be it a young one or somebody with a disability or a terminal illness, you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself. I think you all have a respite care option as well to give caregivers care. As I tell you, you have to put your mask on first, like they say on the airplanes, and then you can put on the masks of others. The final part was nothing she said, but something she embodied, and that's keep on taking care of each other. And certainly in the context of dealing with a terminal illness, it's important to have a team of folks. So I thank everybody here, city staff, colleagues, for all the support. Now read the proclamation and summarize it as follows. Whereas Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month is recognized each November as a time to bring understanding and response to the disease and the individuals and families affected by it. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim November 2025 as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month and call upon people of Rockville to join their fellow residents in the community and across the region to participate in raising awareness and moving towards finding a cure. With that, Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Councilman Fulton seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
All right. And I believe we have somebody here to accept it. Yes, sir. Good to see you. How are you doing? Great. Awesome. Here you go, sir.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Well, good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. I accept this with honor and dignity. I recently went through my own battle with cancer. So I'm back, I'm good. But I want to raise, I am so honored to receive this evening because I want us to talk about cancer like we talk about the common cold. I want to remove the stigma of cancer. You know, we're getting closer to a cure. And trust me, I went through a battle. Like Dr. Miles said, I went through a battle with chemo. But I'm so glad, I'm so thankful for my Lord and Savior that I'm here, okay? And just his blessing, his mighty, honor and blessing over my body. And although I didn't have pancreatic cancer, mine was the result of H. pylori. I had ulcers that became cancerous, and I didn't know that. So I want to talk about it. Feel free to come, anybody, come and talk to me. Since I've been back to work for the last 2 months now, I've recommended or referred 3 people to my oncologist and 2 people to my GI doctor. So it is working. I am a vessel. I'm going to talk about this until I transition from this earth, and with the hopes that we just find a cure for this disease. And again, I'm honored. Thank you so much. You too. Thank you.
Only in Rockville can conversations about hospice and pancreatic cancer be so hopeful and inspiring and positive. So thank you for everyone for that. That was wonderful. I am moving on to give the proclamation for Veterans Day. Whereas America has long stood as a beacon of hope and opportunity, and few embody that spirit here at home and beyond our borders more than the members of our armed forces. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard are part of an unbroken chain of brave patriots who have served our country with honor and made tremendous sacrifices so that we may live free. And now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2025, as Veterans Day and encourage all people of Rockville to recognize the valor and the sacrifice of our veterans through appropriate ceremonies and observances, and by pausing for 2 minutes of silence for our nation's veterans. Thank you. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Thank you. It's been seconded by Councilwoman Larry. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
And I believe we have a member of the American Legion to come accept. And hopefully you'll tell us about our celebration we have on Veterans Day here in Rockville as well. I can do it if you'd like me to. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I accept this proclamation on behalf of the American Legion and all veterans. My name's Tim. I'm an Army veteran, former Army chemical officer. I retired as a major. I'm also a member of American Legion Post 86, right here in Rockville. I enjoy participating in Rockville's Memorial Day ceremony as part of the Color Guard and the Veterans Day ceremony upcoming next week. The Color Guard will be there on Veterans Plaza at 11 on the 11th. Welcome everyone to attend. Veterans Day is a time to honor all who have served in this nation's military, a day to honor all veterans, regardless of which branch of the military, when they served, where they served, in peacetime, wartime, or in conflict, or how long they served. Remember all the men and women who have served this nation, our armed forces, since the beginning of our nation. Veterans are a diverse group. Everyone has their own unique experience, whether it's Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, Space Force. Everyone has a different story. And within each of those services, there are different specialties, which contributes to the diversity of the veterans' experiences and who they are. Veterans make sacrifices. They sacrifice time away from family, deployments for training, deployments for combat, deployments for school. Harsh conditions, whether that be in training, conflict, or in war. They risk life and limb. Some make the ultimate sacrifice. They put themselves in very difficult circumstances. So we thank veterans for their service, their commitment to protecting and defending the United States at home and abroad. Thank you.
We'll get a picture.
Okay.
How you guys doing tonight? So it's my pleasure to read the proclamation for America Recycles Day. So in the latest statistics available in 2018, the United States generates more than 292 million tons of municipal solid waste, or MSW, 50% of it going to landfills, more than 4.9 pounds per person per day. Of the MSW generated, approximately 69 million tons were recycled and 25 million tons were composted. But more can still be done. Closer to home, the diversion of refuse that would otherwise be incinerated, it reduces Rockville's impact on Maryland's air, water, and land. Rockville is continually seeking to improve recycling rates. Since 2009, Rockville has offered a single-stream recycling program for its residents to encourage recycling. Rockville's current recycling rate is 41%, up from 30% in 2009, but not yet reaching the target of 50% or more. Recognizing America Recycles Day helps raise public awareness about ways to reduce waste and encourages residents to learn more about what materials are recyclable in Rockville. More information about waste and recycling is posted on the city website. Whereas, to highlight the environmental and community benefits of recycling, businesses, industries, government agencies, nonprofit organizations, and individuals have joined together to celebrate America Recycles Day and will encourage their employees, customers, membership, and residents to pledge to reduce waste and buy more recycled content products. And now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim November 15th, 2025 as America Recycles Day in the city of Rockville, and call upon all residents to recycle as much as possible and spread the word about the need to reduce waste by reusing, recycling, composting, and buying recycled products. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Councilor Miles seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. And I believe we have Erica Shingar, Rockville's Chief of Environmental Management.
Councilor Jackson, thank you for recognizing America Recycles Day, and thank you for all the wonderful proclamations and meaningful proclamations this evening. Just two quick announcements for America Recycles Day. We're opening our 4th compost drop-off station in Potomac Woods Park. It opened last week, so we welcome you to compost. The mayor and council have them available at the senior center, the Rothgard Maintenance Facility, Twinbrook, and now Potomac Woods. And also, along with Montgomery County, there is a community paper shredded event on America Recycles Day, November 15th. It's a Saturday from 10 to 2 p.m. Residents can bring up to 5 paper bags of papers to recycle and shredded. So all your personal documents you can safely dispose there. So thank you very much.
So, oh, picture. All right, take 2. Just last week in front of City Hall, we held a vigil, and we had people from all over the city, including members of the mayor and council, standing together, holding candles, and remembering those who have been lost as pedestrian victims. What is interesting is just about every single person, as we went around the circle, knew someone who has either been killed or seriously injured by pedestrian violence. And it's something that we need to understand is critical. And it's the reason why this city has put together Vision Zero. Because until we get to zero, it's not good enough. Just one pedestrian accident that occurs is a problem. And we're not going to stop and we're not going to give up until we get to zero. Whereas the Global Status Report on Road Safety, launched by the World Health Organization in December 2018, found that road traffic injuries are now the leading cause and killer of people aged 5 to 29. Now, therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim November 16th, 2025, as World Day of Remembrance of Road Traffic Victims, and encourage everyone in Rockville to acknowledge the victim of road traffic incidents and to take safety precautions when driving on or crossing roads. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
We have a second? Councilor Miles seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. So now I'd like to invite Kathleen Kleiman, who has been one of the strongest advocates for pedestrian safety here in Rockville, to say a few words and accept the proclamation.
Well, he said most of what I would think to say, with the only exception. The city has a commission for transportation and mobility and advise the city mayor and council on these kind of issues of how to improve the safety in the city, how to improve the emotion and the pleasure of moving around in our community. And then there's also advisory task forces. One is specifically for pedestrian issues and another one for bicycle issues. And we need more help on all of these issues. We need more ideas. We need more stories. We need to be more aware. And I'm out to recruit if anybody wants to jump on board, someone who has a real sense of mission on these kinds of issues. So I'm looking for that. So, thank you. Thank you very much for this recognition. Okay. I'm going to turn here. I don't want to run over anybody.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to read the proclamation for Small Business Saturday on November 29th. Small businesses are the backbone of our local community and our local economy, and they provide a number of opportunities and job creation for our community members. Whereas the City of Rockville, Maryland celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. According to the United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 34.8 million small businesses in the United States, which represent 99.9% of all businesses with employees in the United States. And now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby proclaim November 29th, 2025, Small Business Saturday, and urge the Rockville community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants during this day and throughout the year. Madam Mayor, I move the proclamation.
Councilmember Fulton seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye. And we do have someone, Ms. Marsley B. King, founder and creator director of MVK Scarf Jewelry and Sustainable Accessories. I'd like to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so nervous to be here today, but I'm so honored, and I have a lot of emotions, so I'm sorry. So, as an immigrant and Brazilian female founder, today is a big step of my life when I started that business 6 years ago, and I listen a lot of noise outside around me. Then I don't have enough English, I don't have enough money. I don't know America's a way to do a business here, but I know for my country, I have a passion to recreate as a sustainable fashion accessories. I know the business, I have the conviction, and I don't give up. So I'm so happy and glad to be here today, recognized by MWBC Shop Local Rockville after giving me an opportunity to be at the city. It show my passion, show the vision of the business, what have behind the business as a mission, as a recycle, as we can take care more of our planet, collaboration with. So it's such amazing time to be here today. I have to say thank you, Rockville. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Maryland can hug me like a family. Thank you.
Buenas noches, Rockville. Ahora tengo el orgullo de celebrar un equipo de fútbol de Rockville. Good evening, Rockville. Today we have a great honor to celebrate a very special team of Rockville. The city of Rockville has the Latino Youth Development Team, and they are incredible. I have to say that they're not only getting recognized today for making it to regionals, but they won. They won this weekend, in fact, and the team tied the first playoff game 1-1 on 10/26, and then they won their second playoff game just this past weekend for a total of 5-3 to win the championship. The last time they've been able to make it to regionals was in 2017. So we just appreciate all of their dedication. We also appreciate staff. This is not just your ordinary football team. I say football, soccer. They also get together and supported by our team to do positive things, to support each other. And they are also college bound. They're getting support and services to make it on their journey so that they don't only excel sports-wise, but they excel in their character and they excel in their academics and they're providing opportunities for their family. And so we're very, very proud. En gracias a su familia a venir hoy. So with that, I'll get started on recognizing some of our winners, ganadores, and then we'll move on. My colleagues are going to join me, so please bear with us as we split this up. Okay. First, I'm going to read the first certificate of recognition, and then we'll read the names thereafter. It is an honor for the mayor and council to recognize these members of the Latino Youth Development Program soccer team. We congratulate you on making it to the finals of the High School Sam's Select League. The team's record for the regular season is incredible, and you've won the last game. The team has worked hard on and off the field, and this is the first time the team is able to make it this far since 2017. This council is very, very proud to celebrate this remarkable accomplishment. We first welcome Eduardo Acosta. Welcome Germán Chaparro. Oh, okay. His brother, what's, can I say? So we have a Germán R. Chaparro and a Germán E. Chaparro. So welcome. And now we welcome Brian Campos.
All right, here we go. Next up, we have Edson Kanchanya. Congratulations. And Eric Castillo. Congratulations. Javier Claros. Congratulations. And Yoser Correas. Congratulations. There you go.
Jose Delgado. Congratulations. Morris Flores Gatan. Congratulations. And Jonathan Garay. Congratulations.
feel standing around all these young guys, my eyes starting to work better. Getting some youth from y'all. I don't know about the good looks, though. I have to work on that. You know, good-looking bunch here. I will call up Paulo Gonzalez. Yeah, man. Congrats. Let's see. Manuel Lopez. Oops. Congrats. And Vilmer Nolasco. Congrats, man.
Next we have Giovanni Parada. Congratulations. Brian Ramos. Congratulations. Emiliano Ramos. Congratulations.
Yugadors. All right. I got the pleasure actually of watching their final, and the only reason I recognize the names are from the coaches yelling it for 90 minutes. So it was a phenomenal game. Literally, this is a team full of Maradonas. The good part of Maradona. Let's see. We have. There we go. Samuel Ramos. All right. Next, Saul Rodriguez Soriano. I could have folded this for you guys. Sorry about that. Congratulations. And last but not least on my list, Nelson Rodriguez.
All right, next we have Alex Castro. Congrats. And next we have Abraham Castro. Congratulations. And finally, Balmori Moran. Come on on. Come on down. Congratulations.
Do you want to share?
Thank you so much to Mayor and City Council for this recognition. We are beyond proud of our boys. They worked hard in the summer and it paid off for this season. And they worked hard not just in soccer, but in their grades, also improving in school. And we're just so proud of this accomplishment. And I know that their parents are proud, but they're also excited to see this recognition. This recognition for their children. So thank you so much.
Behind and you just went back. Okay. Man, but I'm so short.
Y'all want to make a couple rolls? Yes. Yeah, the tall, y'all tall ones in the back and then not so tall ones in the front. All right.
Saúl.
And then you all face me over here.
This is the largest picture.
I think it is. I don't know. Can you see it? You all should feel free to step up on the table.
There's a grado.
Yeah, I know, right? Can you see us at all? Kathleen, can you see us?
We're so proud of all of our champions in Rockville. I think there's so much going on in the news. When you can celebrate wins like this and positivity among our youth, it is worth it every day and twice on Sunday. So we're so thankful, and we know that we're going to continue to see a lot of positivity out of these winners. I also just want to say thank you to all for allowing us to create some awareness, whether it's pancreatic cancer or what's going on in municipal government. It's a chance to hear about important things that are going on. Maybe it makes you think about getting a screening or reaching out to someone in hospice or getting involved in a nonprofit. There's so much to do, and we appreciate all of you for celebrating with us. We are going to take a brief break, and we'll be back at 6:30. Good evening and welcome back, Rockville. Today is November 3rd, 2025, and we're beginning our meeting 26-25. We'll begin with our agenda review. Ms. Sarah Taylor Farrell.
Madam Mayor and council members, there are no changes for the agenda this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And welcome, Mr. Mihalik, City Manager's Report.
Mayor Asham, members of City Council, good evening. Mayor, you talked about positivity earlier this evening. You know what? I'm just going to roll with that theme if that's okay. So some really good news to report. We continue to move forward with a number of our sustainability initiatives, and last week we got some really good news. We are now going to be the recipient of an $800,000 grant. I always repeat the big numbers. You guys know that, an $800,000 grant to install 4 publicly available fast charging EV stations at our swim and fitness center. We're really excited about that. Erica Shingara is here. I'm sure she applied for that grant and she won another one, as she usually does. So that's a really cool initiative, and I'm sure our motoring public will enjoy using that station. Secondarily, I mean, we've heard a lot over the past several weeks about SNAP and the SNAP benefits, and I think we heard a bit of a reprieve over the weekend, but just know I heard from a number of you about what can we do for our residents that have SNAP benefits, whether there's a bit of a renewal of that or not. And I'm pleased to tell you that our Rec and Parks Department made sure that at the Saturday Farmers Market that people who do have SNAP benefits could take advantage of that at our farmers market. And that was not only for this weekend, but we're going to continue that throughout the whole month of November until the end. So I'm pleased to share that with you. And the team moved really quickly and innovatively on that to take care of people. We appreciate that. And lastly, I'll just say it's a season of giving, and we have a number of different initiatives that our residents can take advantage of. They're city-sponsored events. There's a Thanksgiving food drive going on right now. There's also a December toy and book drive. We'd love for people to participate. Keep in mind that people can either provide goods, they can make a monetary contribution, or more than anything else, they can just simply spread the word to others. So we hope people take advantage of that and go on to our website and look for opportunities to give or share the giving spirit. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the positive news. We appreciate it. I just wanted to note that Rockville Reports includes a number of nonprofits listed. If folks want to get involved and be supportive in the community, please check out Rockville Reports. I also want to acknowledge that several faith-based institutions have also been stepping up with food drives. I know Christ Episcopal Church has food all week. Mount Calvary has food tomorrow, and several others across the city. And then lastly, I just want, since you're talking about federal support, just wanted to note that the Maryland Women's Business Center, in collaboration with Rockville Economic Development, Inc., launched Founders Rising, and it's a program to help federal employees who want to own their own businesses join an entrepreneurship training program. So please check that out as well. Councilmember Van Grack.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I just have one question for the city manager. I know that over this past weekend, over Halloween, there was a scare out to the community with regard to a report from the Rockville Police Department with regard to needles found in candy. But I also understand that due to the tireless and dedicated work of the Rockville Police Department investigative team, there's an update which, while also tragic, is potentially less scary to the community. Could you potentially give us an update?
Yeah, I'm pleased to do that. First of all, I just want to acknowledge and thank you for calling out the Rockville Police Department. They really were very responsive to that concern out in the community. They investigated a number of witnesses, and I'm pleased to tell you that they ended the scare by learning that it is an unfortunate prank. So it's sad that it's a prank. It's sad that someone would stoop so low as to do that, and yet our police department was able to uncover that very quickly and to put those fears to bed. So thanks for asking about it. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and I'm glad that we had a safe Halloween. Thank you for that as well. We will now be moving on to community forum. This is a chance for us to hear ideas and questions and concerns from our community. We invite folks to address the mayor and council, but please speak in a civil and courteous manner, and also be respectful of each other. Each person is allowed 3 minutes, and we ask that you stick to the 3 minutes allowed. There is a time clock in front of you. You will hear an audible beep when your time has expired. Please state your name and whether you live in the city of Rockville for the record. First, welcome James Pontius.
Hi, Rockville Mayor and Council. I'm James Pontius. I live on South Van Buren Street here in Rockville. I come to you tonight to talk about essentially a basketball play area that potentially could be no more in the West End. A number of kids, neighborhood kids, have fun there, but there's some facts, and I'm coming to you to try and see if we can get a compromise or something to help out their community, because the kids definitely had a lot of fun. I submitted a packet with some photos that had the details of names, addresses, a little more facts. I have hard copies if anyone needs them. But ultimately, your help, whatever you can do, have a look. I'll start by saying, when driving around Rockville, you see a lot of driveways. Maybe you've seen some of these driveways on side yards. Maybe some of these side yards have patios attached to them, maybe some basketball hoops, maybe permanent, maybe portable. Well, you're allowed to do that by right throughout the city without a permit, except if you live in the West Montgomery Avenue Historic District. Still don't need a permit, but you have to get a certificate of approval before doing something like that. Recently, last week, there was a hearing on a retroactive certificate of approval, which was denied. There's a basketball court already built. Unfortunately, they did not get their certificate ahead of time, but the options for the homeowners were remove or relocate the basketball hoop and play area, which is prohibitively expensive. There are a number of mitigation options that were not really offered to them, but if you guys could help however you see fit, and if I know you guys are very busy, please see what you can do. But in effect, this is going to result in a ban on this family, their kids, the homeowner, future homeowners from ever putting in something like this again by having a denial. I brought a prop, if you'll indulge me, hopefully to drive the point home. So this is an apple pie. Kids playing basketball in a family yard is as American as apple pie. I bought this pie in the West Montgomery Avenue Historic District at Petit Delicé. All of the photos I submitted are of buildings and properties within the West Montgomery Avenue Historic District. Some of them have new driveways that were endorsed by city staff and approved within the last 3 to 5 years. They all got their slice of pie. If someone cuts in line to get a slice of pie, you don't say, you are permanently banned from getting pie, your kids will never get pie. You send them to the back of the line, and when they get back up, maybe they'll get one. Please, please help. There's a ticking clock on me talking tonight, as well as on this issue. See what you can do, any consideration, any thought, any open to a world of possibilities, but these kids really, really enjoy their time there, and do it for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome Tiffany Grier. Do we have Tiffany Grier? Okay. Welcome Jeffrey Land.
Good evening, council members and Madam Mayor. This is my first time speaking publicly, and so I'm a little bit nervous. But I want to thank you for the time that you allow me to come share my issue with you. What it's about is, may seem like a small thing, but for me, privacy rights and inclusion are really important, and it's about the parking meters. So in the parking meters, not all of them, but a lot of the parking meters, you could only pay with an app, as you guys probably already know. You've seen those. The problem with that is, though, it's not everybody has or uses or knows how to use those apps. You know, me included. I'm still learning, and so we have an issue of financial inclusion, also privacy. When you use your phone app, you know, it's attached to GPS and it's tracked. So there's a privacy issue as well. Also economic freedom, you know, the freedom of choice. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but there is a Payment Choice Act in the House, the federal and the Congress. It's in the House, it's passed the House. It is before the Senate now. I won't name the representatives and senators sponsoring that bill. But the purpose of this act is to protect the rights of the unbanked and the underbanked, of which there are 25 million Americans in that scenario. And I don't know how many are in Rockville, but I'm sure there's a good number. So we need to protect a viable and inclusive payment option, and also for emergencies, you know. So there's a couple states, I'm just giving a couple of examples. New Jersey and Massachusetts already passed a similar act, a state act. Michigan, Illinois, California, and Louisiana passed similar acts as well, but in more expanded versions. Even in Mexico, the Supreme Court in Mexico confirmed it was a constitutional right to use legal tender. And so the movement in these laws, I believe, is worded as retail and food establishments. But the thing is, if you can't,
Thank you.
better watch the clock next time.
No worries. Welcome and congratulations on your first testimony. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dhruva Diego Kumar.
This one's going to go a little tough because it's not very organized, and I want to talk about, you know, a lot of things, but here it goes again. Thank you, Honorables Mayor Ashton, for leading and presiding on this open democracy forum. Now I pledge allegiance to the flag of British America, USA America, MAGA, America First America. I do not pledge allegiance to this already seceded Latin America and subversive Latin America, Central America, illegals, undocumented, infiltrated into county government, which is already seceded to Central and Latin America. I don't pledge allegiance to that. Now, I'm a full-time caregiver to my mom. I also set up some LLCs, and I only get 3 minutes here. And so we have a lot of complications right now. So this is not as organized as I'd like it to be. And again, I only get 3 minutes. Last week, I said, when I was talking about fair housing discrimination, I said that I have respect for Malcolm X. I need to clarify that, and I'm not going to be scared to talk about any issue. What I would say, that gentleman, very articulate, an intellect, presentable, handsome, if you can say that, or required. So I do have a level of admiration for Malcolm X, and I still believe that MLK statue there is kind of wacko, all there by himself, really wacko statue. We should get more of those civil rights folks there. Now, regarding this Chris Rock business, those people that wouldn't discuss with me about militant black nationalism, and I don't want to keep repeating that and disrespecting. I think you all should think of yourselves just as good Americans, not this group or that group, but we are groups, so we do have groupings. I want to talk about, again, this Latin American, Central American, illegal, undocumented community that has abused me and my family, criminalized against us. I want to let y'all know, y'all ain't doing us any favor here by working. You all make above minimum wage, you always have. This has been a sanctuary protective place. I want to repeat again, and I'm not able to say everything I want to say. We, from India, part of the British, seat of the British Empire, you have to think of our country like Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a small little island. Some call it a garbage island, but my country is, in those days, in those centuries. So we are part of the founder citizenry as it evolves.
Thank you very much.
Just one last line, the founder citizenry, English settlers,
Thank you very
European
much.
settlers, and African American slavery lineage.
Thank you very much. We
And
appreciate
then
your time.
I'm sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you. Welcome, Pat Reber.
Well, I'm here again. I live in Newmark Commons. I welcome this opportunity. It's a great opportunity for democracy, the way you conduct your meetings, and you do listen to us. I know that. I just wanted to say that we in Newmark Commons, we appreciate the response we've received so far to our invitation to visit the plot of land we are worried about. And we hope that more of you know you are welcome to come visit so you can see what we are talking about in all our emails. We know you are busy, and thank you for all you do. I've left our contact details with the staff. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the list of those who have signed up in advance. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay. Thank you to everyone who has participated. Just note that I know we have some emails that staff will be following up on. And we appreciate the opportunity to offer opportunities for everyone to be able to share their views and their feedback, and we are committed to being an inclusive city. We'll now be moving on to a special presentation. We welcome Susan Jenkins, CEO, Arts and Humanities Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, to give a special presentation regarding the development of the county's new cultural plan. Welcome. And I also want to acknowledge our Rockville City Lead, Ann Odell, Cultural Arts and History Program Manager. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you so much, Mayor Ashton, and it's wonderful to see you. And council members, thank you so much for having me this evening. I'm very excited about this presentation. My name is Susan Jenkins, and I'm the CEO of the Arts and Humanities Council of Montgomery County. I'm a 37-year resident of Rockville, and my kids went to Julius West Middle School and Richard Montgomery, and even worked for the city of Rockville. So we have a long-standing relationship with the city, and I'm very, very excited to be working on a cultural plan that I know that the city will also benefit from. So we started work on the cultural plan about 18 months ago now, and we have gone through a couple of different phases. So I'm going to just update you now as to where we are. I have a script, so I'm going to stay on it so that I don't go too far afield. So here we are. We are working with MNC PPC, Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, and the work we're doing is dovetailing with Thrive 2050, which is the master plan developed by MNC PPC and ratified by Montgomery County Council. So what drove us to think about a new cultural plan is that the last cultural plan for Montgomery County was done in 2000 and ratified in 2001. While we are a very, very, very different county than we were at that time. And so as from my perch, as I began looking around, thinking about what we would need to do to really do something impactful And at the same time, our strategic plan for the Arts and Humanities Council was ending. It became clear to me that we needed to do something a bit more than another cultural plan. For those of you who don't know about the Arts and Humanities Council, we're designated local arts agency in Montgomery County, Maryland. We're the largest designated local in the state. There are 24 locals, and we are the largest of those. So as we began to think about the cultural plan, our framing question was, how can Montgomery County help its residents lead culturally rich lives and best support community-backed priorities through arts, culture, and the humanities? So we did a lot of pre-research for the plan, and we landed on some information from the community that told us that residents were most interested in these three pillars: belonging, cultural resilience, and intersectionality. What did I do wrong there? Yeah. So for belonging, we wanted to create a community where everyone belongs and can lead culturally specific and rich lives. So our charge is to create a new cultural plan for Montgomery County, which means coming up with a vision and a roadmap that tells us how the local government should support arts and cultural activities with funding, programs, laws, and regulations in a way that helps achieve goals that are important to the community. So this framing question that I first showed you helped us get closer to that. So based on AHCMC's prior in-depth community research, these three pillars, belonging, cultural sector, and resilience, helped us figure where a community where everyone belongs that can lead culturally rich lives, helped think about how artists and our cultural communities can thrive, and how we could use arts, culture, heritage, and creative expression to help solve community challenges. Just a little bit more about those sections. And here is really the crux of the work we're trying to do. So the purpose of the outreach was to gain input on the current context for arts, culture, and humanities in the county, how that context applies to each pillar, and what the needs of the plan should respond to. We also wanted to hear from many voices, with a special emphasis on engaging the people and groups most likely to be affected by the plan, but least likely to have say in formal planning processes. We identified these stakeholders in workshops that many people have participated in last fall. We have engaged in 7 different modes. 1, we've conducted interviews with county stakeholders. We held a youth town hall. We convened focus groups with the cultural sector. We held pop-ups, cultural preserves, engagement events right here in downtown Rockville. We presented to boards, commissions, and classes. We distributed a community survey. We've supported grassroots community conversations. Each one of those events targeted specific groups of stakeholders. In total, we've reached more than 2,000 people with 86 engagements over the last 7 months. Today, I'm going to describe each of these outreach modes and what we learned from them, then we'll wrap up with an overview. So we did brief 15 to 20-minute presentations to boards, commissions, and classes across the county, government officials and agencies representing Montgomery County. We also presented to a section of Montgomery County's 90 boards and commissions, regional service center advisory boards, boards for our grantees and community organizations, several of which are right here in Rockville, to businesses, to philanthropy, as well as distinct ethnic, affinity, and culturally specific groups, racial and ethnic communities, specific immigrant communities, religious communities, LGBTQIA communities, disability communities, and we presented to geographic and regional communities, libraries, to older adults, to students, and to youth. Our goal was to build awareness about the plan and engage their help to reach diverse constituencies. From February and September 2025. These presentations, we explored the purpose and process for the cultural plan, invited feedback, and encouraged the boards to connect the constituencies they represent with inclusive opportunities for participation. So in this picture, you'll see cultural preserves. There are pop-up creative engagement events that we held at festivals, markets, and gatherings created by our consultant team and DC-based artist Holly Bass. She's pictured on in the middle of this. Our goal was to meet people where they were, to get regular residents' point of view with a racially diverse and multilingual team. We used everyday canvassing, who supported in hosting events, and thank you to Youth Action Media to help document it. We did 9 events, 1 in every council district, plus 2 extras from March through June. We received more than 250 responses. We also hosted community conversations. We engaged grassroots community connectors from different sections of Montgomery County to lead small group conversations with people they know. This activity was yet another really intentional way to capture the voices of groups that are not always at the table. We also recruited hosts that have connections and relationships to the priority stakeholder groups. These conversations took place among racial and ethnic communities, immigrant, religious, disability, older adult communities. We spoke with up-county residents, Ethiopian residents, separate conversation for Ethiopian artists, upcoming conversations with the Jewish community. So we've really tried to cover the waterfront as we think about who needs to be included in this cultural planning work. We provided facilitation training, written guidance, and lists of questions, and volunteer participants could also assemble questions in their groups. We've had 17 conversations, but there's still communities eager to host, and we welcome their input even as we begin to move ahead with analysis. We also hosted a youth town hall, which was really quite dynamic. That youth town hall gave us an opportunity to speak to young people who were middle schoolers, who helped us really think about what was important to them for the cultural plan. We've also conducted many, many interviews with county agencies and with high-influence stakeholder groups to help us. We also conducted an online survey. We made several efforts to increase inclusivity and response rate. We translated the survey into 6 languages: Amharic, Chinese, French, Spanish, Korean, and Vietnamese. The Office of Community Partnership for Montgomery County helped us partner on this, and it allowed us then to reach out through a targeted postcard mailing to 82,000 households in the county, residing in disadvantaged community index areas, community equity index areas. We offered a lottery for $100 gift cards so that we could increase participation. We did transit advertising. We posted advertisements in ethnic media like the Korean Times, El Tiempo, CCACC websites. And we created a social media toolkit so that we could be certain to engage people in this activity. County Executive Elridge also amplified our voice by sending out information about the survey to 550,000 residents. So we had intercept surveys on iPads so that we could make certain that we were doing everything we could to let people know that their voice mattered. We also conducted focus groups with the goal of hearing from arts, culture, and humanities practitioners about the current context. The focus groups were arts and cultural organizations, BIPOC serving and culturally specific organizations, arts educators, creative businesses, and individual arts and cultural practitioners. We did that work from June to August, both in person and virtual, and we facilitated group conversations around a series of questions about how their work is supported in the county. So, what are our takeaways? A few really wonderful things. People throughout the county government and the cultural sector see the value of arts and culture as a way to connect, solve problems, and enhance all kinds of other work. But aside from public art programs, there's really no charge for it within the county's government. So that gives us an opportunity for some policy enhancements. We found uneven understanding across county government of the potential, not just for producing impact for their end users, but how they can conduct their businesses internally. And even for those who are convinced, there is not information on how to do it. Further, arts and culture is decentralized within the county government. Arts and Humanities Council is the county's only funding arm, but does not have executive branch authority. We also heard that it's hard to know where within the county government, outside of the Arts and Humanities Council, to go or whom to talk to get a project done, whether that's permitting, finding a location, or finding additional resources. So the early takeaway for the plan is that we should institutionalize arts and culture within county government and give it some teeth. There has been thought about making the Arts and Humanities Council an official part of county cabinet. That would be an interesting change. There's also calls to create policies that institutionalize the use of art and culture in county projects so that it's not an afterthought. Hand in hand with that, professional development at a county level to do that, helping county staff work with artists, procurement, contracting, and scoping, and a way to look at dedicated funding sources like perhaps enhancing the hotel tax or the utility fees. So it's also important that we review county zoning to see what changes could be made to encourage, allow, and reduce barriers to arts and cultural users. So for belonging, the themes were social connections, welcoming new arrivals, and making certain that there's equitable access to arts and culture all across the county. Takeaways for the plan include continue and expand the wide variety of community events, advertise them widely, make classes affordable, make instruction opportunities for a wide range of ages, geographies, and disciplines. This means support, not just funding, but capacity building and meeting those other needs we've heard about for the artists and organizations that offer those opportunities. And I think it's really critical to think about cultural sector resilience. There's a validation of arts and culture, that it's important and necessary in the county, that funding, broader sources, a bigger pie, and perhaps even a closer relationship with the city of Rockville and other cities within the county to think about how to make the pie bigger. How do we think about space, studio, rehearsal, as well as performance and display space? We're really digging into survey results to see the degree to which housing affordability is also a factor. Professional development for artists and nonprofits, the business side of the work that can make certain that people not only survive but thrive, right? And information sharing for artists about opportunities, peer groups, about how artists are making it easier to find and hire other artists and work, earn living. Not just a wage, but a living wage, and increased communication and clarity of communication. So early takeaways here are: how can the county elevate case-making validation to promote importance of the value of arts and culture at the community, county, state, city level? And who are those key stakeholders that we need to now engage? We need to explore a potential of unused spaces all over the county for arts uses. Think about peer affinity groups for all of us, business training and classes that help us integrate this important asset, and a county navigator to help us figure out what other opportunities they may be for us, right? So we're currently in the envision phase of the plan. We're wrapping up the discover phase, and that's all that research that I've just told you about. And in this envision phase, our advisors have the important role of helping us develop a plan and policy recommendations that speak to the strategic opportunities, needs, and priorities that surfaced from our community engagement and research activities. So we are just at this place, this envision stage. We're hoping that after we finish synthesizing all of the research that I've told you about, we'll be in a better place to offer the draft plan throughout the county. You will see it, and I encourage you all to opine. Your personal, professional, and family input is critical to making this plan something that we can absolutely use throughout the county. And I'm very, very excited to bring it to the city of Rockville. The 5-phase planning process is the design phase, the discover phase, the envision phase that we're in now. Now we'll go to the confirmation stage, and then we'll celebrate. So thank you very, very much for the opportunity to give you this overview of what we've been doing, where we're at, where we hope to go. I'm very humbled and proud to be able to present this to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jenkins, and thank you to Ms. O'Dell for helping to create this opportunity so you can present this to our entire community. We appreciate the work of the county, and we know that our work can be even better coordinated than it is now, but it's great to see what you all have started together. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you again. We'll now be moving on to agenda item 9, consent agenda. We have a few items today. A, authorize the city manager to execute amendment number 1 between the city of Rockville and the state of Maryland Energy Administration to provide a no-cost extension of contract number 2024-11420S1 to March 27, 2026. We have the approval of Memory Walk, which is a art in public proposal by artist Dinah Fisher, and that would be in the Lincoln Park community. We have the authorization for the city manager to sign a supplemental agreement with the Maryland Department of Transportation, State Highway Administration for the Scott Veers Drive Shared Use Path Design Project, which is exciting. That's been on our list for some time. And then lastly, we have item D, approval of our minutes. Colleagues, can we take them all together, or does anyone have any questions to pull? Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to take them all. I just had a bit of discussion after a motion is made.
Sure. Would you like to make the motion?
I don't have my paper, so I'll defer. Sorry.
Okay.
I guess I can say,
Approve-
I
Move
just
to
essentially move
approve.
to approve the consent agenda items 9A, B, and C. as
And D?
read. And D.
Yes. Okay.
As read previously.
All right. Councilman Valeri? Seconds. All right. Dr. Miles, please
Thank
proceed.
you, Madam Mayor, and I want to thank staff. It was just about the memory walk piece. It was a significant increase in price. I thank staff for their information about why the cost differed. It was, again, y'all can correct me if I misspeak, increased cost of materials, increased cost of travel, and to get sufficient community engagement. So just want to make sure that we are minding the money. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will note there was a lot of community engagement. I want to thank Ms. O'Dell for doing that work. Prior to her being here, there was some things that had to be addressed and some healing in the community, and we appreciate the manner in which that was done. And thank you to all the volunteers who stepped forward to help as well. So I think it's going to be a beautiful project coming soon. All right, colleagues, there is a motion made and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Excellent. Thank you very much. It passes. We'll now be moving on to agenda item 12, which is our work session. We're talking about Chapter 4, Arts and Cultural Affairs Ordinance Revisions. We welcome back Ms. Ann O'Dell, who leads the Culture, Arts, and History as our program manager in the city manager's office. This is the first time this project is being presented. Welcome, Ms. O'Dell.
Now I'm on. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. I'm Ann O'Dell, Arts and Culture Program Manager in the City of Rockville. And this evening, I will present to you suggested revisions for Chapter 4, Arts and Cultural Affairs Ordinance. During the presentation, I will provide background on the ordinance, the feedback I'm requesting from you, proposed revisions, next steps. We'll then take your feedback and answer any questions you might have. Chapter 4 was first adopted in 1975, 50 years ago, before public art and arts management were professional career tracks. It establishes Articles 2 through 5, which are the Cultural Arts Commission, incorporation of works of art in public architecture, publicly accessible art in private development, and art in public places. Article 3, incorporation of works of art in public architecture, was adopted in 1978. It's funded by 1% of the annual CIP appropriation for new CIP projects, and it allows for public art and city development projects. Article 4, publicly accessible art and private development, was adopted in 2001, and it requires developers of qualifying projects to make a required contribution for publicly accessible art. Article 5, Art in Public Places, was adopted in 2003 and funded by 0.1% of the previous fiscal year's budget. It allows for public art on city property. These revisions are being proposed this evening to continue the implementation of the 2019 Arts and Culture Study recommendations. One of the first recommendations the study made was to establish the Arts and Culture Program manager position. That position's been filled. And the work plan for this position mirrors the recommendations of this study. This is the first time that the city has had a professional arts manager on staff, and looking at our future program development of how we will integrate arts and culture into our economic development, community development, and tourism to fulfill Rockville's potential as an arts destination is one of the top items on my work plan. Also, our roles and processes need to reflect best practices. The most recent article was adopted 22 years ago, so we need to consider the practical implementation of the ordinance and how it has evolved over time, and we need to formalize and professionalize our role in arts and culture development so that we can meet the best practices of the public art and arts management fields. The feedback that is requested from you this evening is, does the mayor and council support merging incorporating works of art and public architecture and art and public places articles into one public art program article? The recommendations for the publicly accessible art and private development article, and enhanced community engagement in public art program delivery. Looking first at the structure of the ordinance, you see the current structure in the left-hand column, and on the right is the proposed structure that adds a preamble, combines Articles 3 and 5 into one public art program article, which would be Article 3, and then renaming Article 4 to simply Public Art and Private Development. The preamble is being suggested to clarify the focus of work for the Arts and Culture Program. Historically, arts and culture programs have been produced by Recreation and Parks. So with a new program area, newly dedicated staff to this program area, it's an opportunity to really focus and clarify the scope of work for arts and culture programming. Article 2, it's suggested to move the process-related language to the guidelines because guidelines are updated much more efficiently and effectively and easily than ordinances. This helps us meet our community where our community is. It helps us evolve with our community. And we're also suggesting to shift budget and project management responsibilities to city staff because we now have staff capacity to do this work. Article 3, Public Art Program, we're suggesting merging AIPA and AIPP into one public art program. In conversations with my colleagues who have managed these in the past, AIPP was created to help supplement the AIPA budget. So in addition to this, both programs have similar purposes and administrative processes. We need to clarify our roles in program administration to help us improve program delivery and follow those best practices in the public art field. Moving process-related language to guidelines for reasons previously discussed. Suggest revising the definition of acceptable art and eligible sites because the field of public art has grown substantially over the last 22 years since the last article was adopted. And we can expand our definition of eligible sites to not only be those properties owned by the city, also to expand to sites in the public realm. Public art plan would replace the art in public places plan, and that would be suggested as led by staff in consultation with the Cultural Arts Commission and approved by mayor and council. So what does this look like practically speaking? Our current processes are in the top row there. Art in public architecture uses the Art in Public Places process currently. And Art in Public Places is led by the Cultural Arts Commission and with staff assistance. So the commission creates the implementation plan, the budget, the project plans, selects the sites, all with staff assistance. The commission leads the art selection, and then the artist designs the art, which is approved by mayor and council, and then the artwork is created and installed. We're suggesting moving to the second process, which is led by staff in consultation with the Cultural Arts Commission. This does meet best practices in the public art field. With staff leading the creation of the public art plan, it would guarantee us consistent delivery of community engagement. Staff work across departments consistently with each other. We understand the standards that mayor and council have set forth for us to engage with the community. It also helps staff integrate public art and arts and culture programming into higher level city planning initiatives. So we work in consultation with the Cultural Arts Commission to create that plan. It's approved by mayor and council. Mayor and council would also approve contracts $250,000 or more in alignment with procurement standards. Staff would create and manage the project plans and processes in consultation with the Public Art Committee of the Cultural Arts Commission. And that Public Art Committee would approve the final artwork design. The artwork would be created and installed, and the mayor and council would be kept informed of projects by staff. So practically speaking, the Memory Walk Public Art Project that was approved this evening has been led by staff in consultation with the Public Art Committee of the Cultural Arts Commission, and we've had a really good result with that. So just a note on that one. The community benefits of merging these two programs we can officially combine the funding. We're not suggesting to change the funding structures. We'll keep those in place and integrate public art into broader city plans and projects. We'll be able to respond to how the community evolves and meet the community where it is. And we'll be able to partner with external counties, state agencies, and private entities to put public art in the public realm. And that picture on the right there is an example of a public art program in Arlington County, or a project in Arlington County that was done with Arlington County Public Art, Virginia Department of Transportation, and Vicki Scray, public artists. Suggested revisions for Article 4, public art and private development. First, redefining acceptable art forms for reasons previously discussed. Clearly defining publicly accessible. The article currently allows for art to be installed indoors where it is not publicly accessible. And we're asking to define roles in program administration for reasons previously discussed. Also, eliminating the option to remove the artwork. Currently, the article allows for a developer to remove artwork they have installed on site at no cost to the developer after 5 years. 1 to 5 years after installment, it may be removed. There is, however, a required contribution that's a sliding scale within those 1 to 5 years. Also looking at changing the formula to determine the required contributions, because our current formula is not in alignment with the larger public art field. And also modifying the options for how contributions can be applied so that we have a more equitable program and again align with the public art field. First, looking at how we determine how much a developer is required to contribute to publicly accessible art. The column on the left is an excerpt from the article for multifamily residential construction projects. There's a footnote in the article that says this is annually adjusted based upon the Builder's Cost Index published by McGraw-Hill. And then we refer people to the implementation manual that has the annually adjusted formula, which is on the right-hand side. The current formula results in rates that are more than 3 times the amount in the article. This creates confusion for our stakeholders. It's not the best customer service that we can provide. So we're suggesting updating our formula so that we match the standards of the public art field. We're the only locality in the country of more than 90 localities with this type of formula for public art required contributions. The most common are that developers are required to contribute 1% of the cost or the value of the development project, and there's often a maximum cap associated with that percentage. So this leads us to our next slide. Our current options for contributions are on the left-hand side. The installation of art is the one that is chosen the most often. The second, monetary contribution to the city's Friends of the Arts Fund, is the second most selected option. The provision of an art space, such as a gallery or office space for arts and culture nonprofit, has only been selected once, and that was a gallery space. The provision of an arts-based infrastructure, such as lighting or sound equipment, has never been selected. And making a monetary contribution to a qualifying arts nonprofit has been selected rarely, not often. And we found that the organizations receiving those contributions are the ones in closest proximity to city staff. So it's not really a wholly equitable program. Or you can make a combination of any of the above. We're suggesting simplifying this so that we are installing art on site or making a contribution to the city's public art program in the amount of 1% of the cost of the development, not to exceed $300,000, and that if they make the contribution to the public art program, it would go in the area where the development is, so that developer can still benefit from having their property values positively impacted. Community benefits would be that we now have public art that is permanent, it's publicly accessible, we eliminate confusion for our stakeholders, we have a more equitable program, and we align with best practices in the public art profession. Next steps that we propose are to prepare a draft based on your guidance this evening and going forward. We would then present the draft to the Cultural Arts Commission, receive their comments and feedback. Whatever incorporations we need to make, we will do that. Have that reviewed, and then present the ordinance to mayor and council. And at this time, we'll take your feedback.
I'll just pause and say thank you so much for this work. I know the Cultural Arts Commission supported and worked very hard on the 2019 study, which then funded the position that you have, and we really appreciate the help in terms of professionalizing and keeping all this on track. Rockville does have incredible art. There are over 50 public art projects all over the city, and even more if you consider some of the Rec and Park specific inclusions. I did want to note for those who are interested, there is a virtual gallery online if you want to learn more about it. Of course, going in person is best, but you can look at it from your computer. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that. And then I just also wanted to note that we have a lot of arts nonprofits in the area. We have performances across the city. Art is pervasive, and we want to continue to grow. We also have performing arts RESCOs, resident art organizations, whether that's the ballet or the theater, and they often are at F. Scott Fitzgerald Theater. So there's a lot of robust work to make sure that we are making an inclusive art environment, and it's also part of our history, our culture, and storytelling. So just want to give some of that preamble. I also wanted to acknowledge the Cultural Arts Commission for their work, and I know you lead that. They meet monthly in case anyone's interested in listening and joining that in the future. I will just start and say maybe we can, I know folks might have some general questions. I appreciate the work that was done here. I do want to find ways to hear some of the feedback of the Cultural Arts Commission before it goes to the ordinance, because I know some of the people on it actually help craft some of the language which is now part of our law. And so I think while I'll give some feedback today, I do want to hear from them before it actually gets to ordinance stage, just to be effective and efficient with staff's time, because I know legal has a lot to work on. And I think if we can get a robust feedback from them and that shared with us, that will help to make it even better product. So I wanted to call that out. There are some significant changes here. And I just wanted to say I saw the benefits of combining the two public programs. Is there any negative on that that you can think of? I just always want to think about unintended consequences.
Not that I would see, because they already have similar purposes and administrative processes, so it would really be more acknowledging what the current reality is.
Okay, yeah, excellent. And then in terms of the art and private spaces, I know you're looking at changing that, the formula. Would the same exclusions apply? I know that there is a carve out, so if someone is building affordable units, Molly Price dwelling units or affordable housing, something specific to nonprofits that is not included. Is that still planned to be included in the future that way, that there's exclusions?
I would recommend maintaining the criteria that we currently have.
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to also think about our affordable housing goals. And obviously there are ways to partner so we can make sure that every space is beautiful, but I know that the cost of developing that is something that sometimes inhibits projects, and I wouldn't want to inadvertently hurt those projects. All right, so I have some other questions, but I want to pause and see what my colleagues have to say and if there are any other questions going forward. But I just want to reiterate, very well done. I would like feedback of the Cultural Arts Commission before it goes to our ordinance so that we could see and help maybe have a very effective and clean product. Councilman Van Graag, and then Dr. Miles. Oh, Dr. Miles. Let's go Dr. Miles first, and then Councilman Van Graag.
Well, thank you both. Thank you for the presentation. I'm largely going to echo what the mayor said, and thanking you all. And I would also like to input Cultural Arts Commission. The main point I have on this one, I guess it's point number 2 on the slide. So 2, then subsection 4, this notion, I think my preference would be to make sure that mayor and council still does have a role to remove things. Over time, historically, we found that there are pieces of art that aren't reflective of where we are now and or perhaps need to be amended, need to have a historical footnote given the changing times and mores. So that's the one thing that comes to mind, but I'll save the rest of my comments for a later time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Van Grack.
Just like my colleague said, this is fabulous. I think this is the type of direction we want to go. There's no question prior mayor and councils and this mayor and council truly understand that art in public places and how we address it through our code is important, because we have numerous places throughout the city that art has truly brought life, brought color, brought culture to the city in many different ways. But also, just like my colleagues have said, we're really making some significant changes. And some of the impact that it could have interactions that we're not aware of. And I know that just from the presentation we also just had, there's a lot of moving parts that are happening both in the county, throughout Maryland, and the city with regard to how art in public places are looking and how municipalities and governments are working together with the art community, the developing community, and the residential community. So I would definitely like to see the results from the Cultural Arts Commission, or have their input with regard to some of the interactions that could come to play. And if they have other suggestions, I don't want to regurgitate and have a specific comment with regard to some of this feedback and then learn that there's an impact that we didn't realize that would alter our judgment. That being said, I think this presentation is fantastic. I think that the ideas and some of the nuances that we're looking to correct and adjust seem to be the way that I think we do want to go. But I think in getting into some of the detail and the feedback, I'd like to hear from what the commission has to say.
Thank you. Councilmember Valeri.
I will just say ditto to my colleagues and Madam Mayor's comments so far. And I especially want to highlight Councilmember Dr. Miles' point. That was the first thing that popped in my head as well, that some things age like milk left out on the counter, and I think we need to be able to correct historical wrongs, and be able to explain that, because ultimately at the end of the day, we all have a fiduciary responsibility to the residents of the city, that we are making the best use of their taxpayer dollars. Having said that, I will also say that my other hat is in a background in art and design, and I know how subjective a lot of art is, and can be very daunting to folks. To that end, I would say that it would have been, I think, maybe a more solid strategy to have included some of the examples of these recommendations, what they currently are right now. Because, this is a great presentation, but, eliminating the option to remove artwork, well, what does the current language say or does not say? I appreciate the change in the formula. You mentioned industry best standards. I think knowing what those standards are would be helpful as well. But frankly, this mayor and council, we have not dug into the 2019 report. There's some really great stuff in it. I won't ruin it for my colleagues because it's really awesome. But there's a lot of stuff about a direct connection to economic development that I would like to see, since that is one of our strategic priorities, to be able to look at our arts and culture programs within the lens of it being a net positive for economic development. But there were some specific recommendations from the 2019 report that I would love to see in the future. But yes, having said all this, I think that, and I'm not just saying this because I was on a commission, I think that our volunteers are our greatest assets. And I think that any commission that has the scope of the expertise and the knowledge, I want to hear what they have to say. So even though I'm extremely comfortable having this discussion, I am extremely hesitant to have it, not having had their input first. And I think getting us all on that same level will go a lot longer in this process. So that is my feedback.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to note, just because some people may have, and maybe newer or happened before you were here, there has been some things in the past that was on display that was very divisive in our community. And there was a lot of engagement here in Mayor and Council about that. So that's what people are alluding to. So I wanted to note that, that on the other side, more recently, you've had situations where a private developer had art on their building and they changed it. And there was a whole discussion of how do we deal with that. So I understand both sides. And I just wanted to say the history on some of that is that, yes, we don't want people randomly taking things down that we all invested in and improving. But also we want to be able to evolve so that if something's not inclusive or if it doesn't reflect the values, that we have an opportunity to address that. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. First, let me say thank you for the presentation and all the work that went into it. It's really impressive and a lot of food for thought. And I think you give a good framework moving forward. I won't go too far giving remarks because I think that my colleagues really have already said much of what I was thinking, both in terms of art being an important part of her civic framework, but also the need for the Cultural Arts Commission to weigh in with the framework that you've suggested. When we're speaking about the recommendations, and specifically number 2 and number 4 under number 2, eliminating the option to remove artwork. I think Councilmember Dr. Miles really said it well. It changes over time, and we should be really cautious about removing that ability for the mayor and council or others in the city to alter or remove artwork if it's deemed necessary. With that, I will turn my time back over, Matt.
Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Fulton.
Thank you, and thank you for this. Really easy to understand, which is always helpful to me, so thank you. Couple thoughts. One, I just want to clarify this removal change that is in there. Certainly, I would agree with all of my colleagues if we were if the intention is to make a requirement that neither mayor nor council nor anybody could ever remove any artwork ever. I heard you say that it was actually changing just the ability for the private owner within a set period of time. It wouldn't remove our ability at any point in time. Is that right?
It's pertaining specifically to the art on the private property of the private developer. It should be permanent public art in nature, considering the investment that's going into it. And right now, they can put a piece of art indoors or outdoors and remove it after 5 years without having to pay or require a contribution for that investment to the city. So it would only pertain to private developers and their private property. The public art, we do have, and we would continue to have a deaccession policy so that anything that's divisive that we need to take down, we can go through that process.
So, okay, that's a helpful just clarification. On that point, in looking at the current, it talks about the option for replacement. Like, I'm wondering if we could thread that needle by saying, yes, maybe you can remove a particular piece of art, but there must always be art there as replacement. Just a thought there. It currently speaks to that now. So, and then on sort of the rest of it, yes, all of this generally looks like the direction we want to be headed. I also want to hear from the Cultural Arts Commission. I also think that at what point in that process that happens, as long as the feedback is there from our volunteers, I'm good with that, right? So whether it's before it ever comes to us or before it gets finalized and the Cultural Arts Commission has something better, like more defined to sink their teeth into, I'm fine with that too. So I'm echoing the comments that yes, I want to hear that feedback. At what point in the process, whatever makes the most sense. I don't, so I'm okay with providing some thoughts now, as long as we get that on the back end, which I think you said was always your plan. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Shaw.
I also want to echo my colleagues and thank you for these proposals to the updated ordinance. And also just share that the presentation showed and demonstrated our value in public art. I'm leaning towards all three, and just like my colleagues have shared, I do want to hear from the commission. And I just wanted to also just highlight, I like the way that you broke down the formula and the change. I am leaning towards those two options, but that makes it very clear, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Dr. Miles.
Apologies. Again, this perhaps may be getting in the weeds of something that may be fleshed out a bit later after we get more input. Going back to y'all's slide 11, that, you know, look at the current public art processes compared to what's being proposed. Another point that I would like to bring up, it sounds like, again, we as a body would be approving things above 250,000. Everything else just goes to the committee. I understand why that is from the context of, you know, making our meetings short, like much appreciation. We need to do everything in our power to make meetings short. But again, the same the same point applies in that art is I think it's very important, but I would still want us to have ability to opine even in projects that might be less than 250,000 for the sensitive reasons we put up further. Again, we can talk about this later. I just want to put my 2 cents in there.
Thank you. Councilmember Fulton.
I'm actually not weighing in on the shorter meetings point, but maybe the related broader point, because I did notice that change, and I did predict that some might look at that and say we're removing some power from the council and we should never do that. I disagree with that stance. I think it's, we hire subject matter experts for a reason, and we're here for high level policy. So I am not an art expert. So if we have a commission that is experts and we have staff that are experts and we've given broad policy guidance and it just so happens to make our meetings faster, I wouldn't have a problem with that change.
Thank you. Councilmember Valeri.
So some of us that might be art experts, do we get to like weigh in on that? I was more joking. That, I appreciate too that there are definitely subject matter experts. For example, I'm never going to talk about nor try to diagnose anything from the dais, but if Dr. Miles is open to doing that, that's definitely in his wheelhouse. But I actually, I think going back to being a good steward of public funds, I think that with probably extremely rare exceptions, I don't see a positive to cutting us out. If anything, it actually brings people into the process. What do I mean by that? If the process is not up here at the dais, then it's happening, as a lot of the really good work is, behind the doors that most of the public can't get into. And I think that it's really hard to, just one of the tools in the community outreach toolbox is to have a conversation for the public to hear us have that conversation. A great example of this was before I got elected, but the previous mayor and council, now Madam Mayor and council member Dr. Miles, talking about the mural here at City Hall and whether or not everybody loved the design, but there was one element which was a martini glass, wine glass, something like that. and you know, it wasn't a make it or break it. And I think actually it brought a really good perspective in that even I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't really make sense. It was a good conversation, and I'm not trying to, the word is wordsmith, but I don't know, artsmith something. Like I don't like when people do that to me, so I'd never want to do that to other people. But I think it's actually a better process at the end by getting this kind of conversation in front of folks. I just wanted to make that comment. I did have a question on the amount. Was there I'd love to hear if you had a specific rationale, thought to why, under the proposed options for contributions, why it would not exceed 300,000.
Sure. Currently, the $300,000 mark is the highest that we have in our files that a developer has been required to contribute. And considering that when you factor in the costs of engineering, fabrication, installation, that's actually not that much depending on the size of the development project. And considering that we won't open an ordinance up for revisions for quite a long time, it's a number that falls in the middle of the road when you consider the long-term projections for how costs will increase. Looking also at that national survey of localities across the country, their required contribution caps span $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, and $450,000. So considering the length of time we want this to remain in place, plus the realistic cost of public art and what the maximum contribution to date has been, $300,000 seems to be where we can settle.
Okay, I just didn't know if there was and that's really, really helpful. I think that, maybe if people do want to exceed that of their own volition, I would not stop somebody from doing that. But I think the other thing that is great is that we've seen the ability to talk to people who are bringing projects forward and presenting it to mayor and council, and then seeing the ways in which the art in public spaces element of development can also be used for placemaking. And for this in particular, the proposed development along Ardennes and Halpine, having that in some way say the neighborhood name, Twinbrook, would be phenomenal because we don't, as of yet, I'm looking at Mr. City Manager, as of yet have a neighborhood sign there. So that this was going to be a way to not only incorporate a new community of residents, but also make that placemaking for those of us that live in neighborhoods that don't have any sort of placemaking for the neighborhood itself. So I just wanted to flag that. I am again hesitant to kind of take mayor and council out of the process. A little different than my colleague, more because I think it creates better art at the end of the day. But I also challenged a little bit by, under our current process, getting more updates on where things are. So, because that helps all of us as well. Some of us who may get texts, random days, like, what's going on with this? So having that kind of those updates out there that we can just pick from and share with the community would be really, really helpful, and I think really important.
Thank you. I wanted to thank you, Dr. Miles and Councilmember Fulton, for raising the point. I wanted to opine that I, for different reasons, do support mayor and council having approval opportunity. I think that we did it just tonight with the consent agenda. I like that the public gets to see what's coming and it creates awareness, but also opportunities for public engagement. People get interested. I've seen people will see something in one community that we've talked about, and then they get excited about it in another. So I think that that's helpful. I do also recall that there was potential for drinking-related images to show up on the city hall, and we were able to make a quick tweak on that. And then there was another thing that involved cultural sensitivity that we were able to. So it's nice to just have a final, like, mostly all the work is done by the experts and you, but just a final lens, I think, is helpful. So I do support us having a very minor role in that way of just being able to opine, and also to help create public awareness. So I wanted to weigh in on that. I had a couple of quick thoughts, questions that I wanted to run past you, and also just to say incredible work on some of the murals that are going up. College Gardens went up, Lincoln Park went up, Memory Walk. You guys are like bowling and really getting a lot of pins. So I wanted to honor that work. Also, we had some really cool creative art embedded into the swim center. And then we saw some private work as well with Town Square, at the ABC store that the county runs. We didn't pay for that. And it's nice when other people can pay for it as well. And then the mural that was on one of the storage facilities in Rock East. So we're starting to see some really cool things happening. And again, mentioned there was a lot of performing arts and things that are happening in the city as well. But I just wanted to say there's been a flurry of great activity, so please keep it up. I did want to note, in terms of, we heard the county presentation today. I haven't quite seen the county collaboration, city collaboration in the past, so thank you for bringing them to us. I do wonder if there are ways to foster greater collaborations, or even with the state, and I know we're starting to do work with CSX and WMATA. I think that not all the space is ours, and so if we want to beautify things, we do have to work across partners, whether that's a private or another kind of government or quasi-government entity. So I just wanted to call that out specifically. One thing that has come up as well is there a central place to see what's going on arts-wise? We have been trying to get more stuff on Explore Rockville. I know there's dedicated space on the site for just the art, the public art. But if people are trying to see what's going on in terms of concerts and all that, it just kind of dispersed. So that has come up in the cultural arts plan before, and I just wanted to note that. I don't know if there's a way to address that in what you're looking here, but I just wanted to raise that point because it is an important one. As my colleague has mentioned, I do think that art is also supports economic development and tourism. We've seen how art can transform cities. There's some that are happening here on the East Coast where it's really lifting up the city and giving it revitalization. Is not as expensive as putting up a new building, but it adds color and vitality. And then the last comment I'll make is, I know you're working on a strategic plan, so I don't know if you want to provide an update in the future. It doesn't have to be answered now, but I think that's going to be a bigger part of this discussion. Yeah, okay. Any comments or questions that you, okay, perfect. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. I'll be brief, but I just want to respond to my colleagues and make clear, normally I am for 250, the approval, because as Councilmember Fulton well knows, it shortens our meetings. But in this case, I think that I'm with the mayor and with Councilmember Valeri and Councilmember Dr. Miles. I do think it's important that we weigh in and that we actually see ourselves as somewhat of not experts, but we're in tune with the community, and I think people expect that of us. And art is something that's really kind of unique in terms of the community's buy-in, the community's feelings, and we should not have a limit on that, because I mean we take the community's feelings, we know what the community is thinking, and so I'm really in agreement with the mayor and with my colleagues on this. I don't think we should have a limit of $250,000 when we're considering art.
Councilman Van Gray.
I would just add, I know we're getting into some of the weeds here, and I know there was a great presentation, but we're now getting into places that I know I'd still like to hear from the CAC before we get into them, because I know we're now getting into information and specific parameters that before I give a specific statement on specific issues that we're, noting here, I'd like to hear from the commission first.
Councilmember Fulton.
Sorry, I do feel obligated to clarify something. I will joke all day about shorter meetings. My stance on the issue of mayor and council deciding on design is principled. It's not efficiency based. Like, I don't think we want to be a government that consolidates power in the highest level electeds and removes it from subject matter expert civil servants. So I just want to be really clear on that. I'll joke all day about shorter meetings, but it is a principled stance on that point that I absolutely know I'm alone on, but I'll say it every chance I get.
I understood that it wasn't about shorter meetings, because we did it today. We approved something, it was fast, and we got it done. And I think that we have benefited from having, and because the reason why we did it so fast is because staff and the community did such great work. And hopefully it will continue to be that way. Dr. Miles.
This is so interesting, jousting between the two people on the dais who really like efficient meetings. I just want to put out there, and again, I respect my colleagues. I actually enjoy working with my colleague, Councilmember Fulton. I disagree, and again, it's a principle stance. I think that it's going to sound somewhat hypocritical, because I do think you could, at least at low morale, when you're just like second guessing your subject matter experts, city staff or what have you, or experts in the community. However, I do find that my stance on it is that our highest level city staff employees, appointed or otherwise, are giving us advice, and it's our job to make the decision about what to do with that. At the end of the day, we have to think about political consideration, not about getting reelected, less about that, but more about what it means and how it will represent the city. So that's why I think it's important we have feedback. But I do also, there's a balance between making sure that we are having all staff, all of our volunteer bodies and others work up to their potential and support them 100%, while also being mindful of the implications of something going forward. Because once our name's on it, it's on it. We got to own it. And yeah, I think it's a healthy debate. I think it's a debate that we should have. And I'm glad that she hasn't punched me in the throat yet. No. I'll stop there.
There is no violence in the council.
We're just all about peace.
On that note, on the point of effective and efficient meetings, I think that we have really covered this, and I want to say thank you. I look forward to the feedback, and I should note I'm a liaison to the Cultural Arts Commission, and I know they're watching with bated breath and probably talking to the screen. You will have a chance to weigh in, and we just want to thank you for bringing some fresh perspectives. I appreciate it. If you have any final questions or for us, I think we're good. But
you're welcome. Thank you for hearing what I have brought before you and giving me your feedback. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break. If the team could set up for the next presentation. Welcome back, Rockville. We're continuing our November 3rd meeting, number 26-25. We're now moving on to our item work session 12B, which is focused on inclusionary zoning research. And I appreciate that we have a presentation coming before us on moderately priced dwelling unit program. Welcome, Jane Lyons-Rader, Housing Programs Manager in the Department of Housing and Community Development. And we have with us our graduate researcher, Colin Maloney. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening. I'm very pleased to be joined tonight by Colin Maloney, as you shared, who is a graduate researcher. He's in the University of Maryland College Park Masters of Public Policy program, Go Terps, I have to say. And he'll be giving the bulk of tonight's presentation about the research that he completed for us. But I will kick us off and close up as well. So the outline for tonight's presentation, we're going to start with a little bit of background and some of the objectives of the research and of our work tonight to provide a little bit of context before jumping into the requested feedback. Then Colin will share the findings from his research report, and I'll talk about next steps with the MPDU code rewrite, and then we'll circle back to the requested feedback for further discussion. So as you know, housing is one of 5 focus areas of the Mayor and Council. In 2024, a whole year ago now, there were 3 work sessions on the city's housing strategies, which ultimately became the Rockville Housing Strategies Work Plan that we are now working through. And as a part of that, comprehensively updating the moderately priced dwelling unit section of the code was approved as a strategy by the Mayor and Council. So the MPDU, Moderately Priced Dwelling Unit Program, was established in 1990, so it's a long-standing program, and it's the primary method of producing affordable housing in the city of Rockville, which makes it critically important, especially right now with affordable housing as such a dire need. And so this is a very important project, and this is only the beginning of a lot of research that is going to go into this project. The findings that we'll be discussing tonight are more focused generally on inclusionary zoning programs, as Colin will talk about a little bit more. Inclusionary zoning is the umbrella term that's given within the housing policy industry for programs like the MPDU program. So we won't be focusing as much on the specifics of the city's program, although we will talk about the city's program in relation to other programs nationwide and regionally. But so just to reiterate that will be our focus for tonight, but we plan to dive much deeper into researching the city's code, to identify the strengths and weaknesses of the existing program is one of our primary objectives. We're also working to understand findings from academic research and national best practices. That was a lot of what Colin dived into. And ultimately, our goal is to design an inclusionary zoning policy that will best serve Rockville residents by 1, creating new affordable housing, and 2, providing economic diversity while minimizing cost impacts on market rate renters and home buyers. So our requested feedback is, do you agree with the city staff that we should, 1, continue to have an inclusionary zoning program? Looking at the program from the ground up, we wanted to make sure we asked that very basic question, but we do recommend that we continue to have an IZ program. 2, explore policies that lessen the cost burden of an IZ program on market rate renters and home buyers and balance the need to incentivize housing development. And some of Colin's research will bring some light into why that's a question that we are asking. Do you agree with city staff that we should explore a more flexible payment in lieu option while prioritizing the construction of income restricted units? And 4, explore ways to target lower incomes and improve reliability. And with that, I will hand it over to Colin. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Good evening, Mayor, Ashton, and council members. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to share my report findings with you, and also like to extend my thanks to Jane and others at the department for their feedback and guidance throughout writing this report. So again, the goal of this report was to highlight the various design, production outcomes, and trade-offs associated with inclusionary zoning and provide DHCD staff with a few considerations as they work to rewrite Chapter 13.5, the Moderately Priced Dwelling Unit Program. Throughout the presentation, I will often refer to inclusionary zoning and the MPDU program as simply IZ. So my report covers 5 main topics. First is housing affordability challenges, which assesses housing needs in the city. Second is inclusionary zoning design, and this section takes a look at the current MPDU program design in the city of Rockville and compares it to IZ programs in the region. The third section is on inclusionary zoning unit production. So here I talk more about what factors are associated with programs that successfully produce inclusionary units, and I also take a look at historical MPDU production in Rockville. fourth section of the report analyzes IZ's economic impacts on housing developers, market rate consumers, and governments, and also explores how the cost of providing inclusionary units is distributed among them. Finally, the last section of this report does look at an under-researched area, which is the racial and economic diversity outcomes of IZ. So beginning with affordability challenges, data from the U.S. Census Bureau estimates that nearly half of renters and a quarter of all homeowners in the city of Rockville are cost burdened. So these are households that spend 30% or more of their income on housing expenses. So my report looks further into these affordability challenges by analyzing the housing gap in the city. And essentially, a gap analysis reflects the availability of affordable homes for various income groups. So this first table here looks at renter-occupied units in the city. You'll see the rows represent various household income groups. So here, those that earn less than or equal to 30% of the area median income, those roughly between 30 and 50% of AMI, and those between 50 and 80% of AMI. Really, the important column to look at here is column I, which is outlined in the box in red. And this column reflects the surplus or deficit of housing units in the city for each income group. So as the table reflects, households with incomes less than 30% of AMI have the greatest shortage of affordable units in the city, but shortages do persist for households earning between 30 and 50% of AMI as well. So table 2 is the same format as the previous, except table 2 is now looking at homeowners, and the income bands are slightly shifted here. But again, the important column is column I, which again shows the surplus or deficit of affordable units to each income group. In here, we see similar trends emerge with lower income households facing the greatest shortage of affordable homes. Now, it's worth mentioning here that there are several barriers and factors that contribute to unaffordable housing. For renters, they are not only faced with an undersupply of affordable units, but many also face low and stagnant wages. Homeowners face similar income challenges, and I've also experienced increasingly high home prices, mortgage rates, insurance premiums, and property taxes in recent years. Additionally, broader macroeconomic trends such as widening economic inequality, reduction in federally subsidized housing, and burdensome government regulations also contribute to the issue. So it's clear that there is a need for programs to alleviate some of these financial pressures, which is why many cities and counties have chosen to adopt inclusionary zoning programs. But what exactly is IZ and what does it do? Well, it does two things. First, it expands the supply of affordable units, and it also increases access to high cost and high opportunity neighborhoods as a result. IZ typically delivers affordable units by either requiring or encouraging developers to designate a portion of their new housing units to be priced below market rate. And in the city of Rockville, the IZ program was established in 1990, again in City Code Chapter 13.5, which is referred to as the Moderately Priced Dwelling Unit Program, or simply the MPDU program. So IZ programs vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but they generally share several program design features listed here. The minimum set aside is the proportion of total units that must be made affordable in a new development. So in Rockville, this is 15% of total units. Several programs in the region also have set-aside requirements that range up to 15%. And many programs also have varying set-aside requirements depending on factors such as the housing type, location, and affordability levels of the inclusionary units. Next is the affected project threshold. And this describes the types of projects that are subject to IZ programs and requirements. And in Rockville, this is for projects proposing 20 or more units. And here I found that nearby jurisdictions have higher program thresholds ranging from 24 to 50 units, except for Montgomery County and the city of Gaithersburg, who also have their threshold set at 20. Developers often receive incentives for providing IZ units beyond what is required, so beyond that 15%. And these incentives can take multiple forms, but often includes a sort of density bonus. Rockville does offer a density bonus for projects in medium density zones that provide a higher percentage of MPDUs than is required. And this is the most common incentive offered across the region. But it's important to mention here that while this incentive is offered by the city, it has never been used by developers in Rockville, according to the city staff that I spoke with. Next is income targeting. So most programs have specific income parameters for renters and purchasers of IZ units. So in Rockville, for rent MPUDs are targeted at households earning roughly 60% of the area median income. For sale units are targeted at households earning roughly between 50 and 80% of the area median income. Most programs in the region likewise target households, again, earning between 50 and 80%, although a few programs do target households earning as little as 30% AMI in their rental programs. Lastly, here is the affordability duration, which defines how long IZ units must remain affordable for. And this is sometimes also called the control period. So in the city, for rent units must remain affordable for 99 years, and for sale units must remain affordable for 30 years. This is in line with programs in Montgomery County, in the city of Gaithersburg. However, some programs in the region have shorter affordability periods for their rental IZ units, which typically range from 30 to 40 years. There is a full summary of the programs provided in Table 3 of the report. So the third section of my report moves from the design of IZ programs to the outcomes of IZ, focusing on inclusionary unit production. And here, my literature review revealed several findings, but three main findings stand out. So first, there are several factors associated with inclusionary unit production, which includes strong housing market, mandatory program participation, incentives for developers, clear and predictable program guidelines, and flexible compliance options. Second, research has found that an increase in the minimum set aside is actually associated with a decrease in total units. So in other words, programs with lower IZ set aside requirements tend to be associated with higher inclusionary unit production compared to programs with higher requirements. And third, some evidence does suggest that the number of inclusionary units that are actually built increases as the minimum project size that triggers IZ increases. So again, a program with a project threshold of 40 units would be expected to produce more units than a program with a threshold of 20 units per se. But taken together, these studies do provide some useful information about how changes in a program's design can ultimately impact the number of units actually produced. So now I'll actually turn to look at inclusionary unit production in the city of Rockville. So figure 2 here reflects the number of MPDUs produced per year in Rockville from 2000 to 2024. And it's further broken down by rental and for sale MPDUs. Years 1990 to 1999 are omitted from this figure, as no MPDUs were produced during those years. So since its adoption in 1990, the city's MPDU program has produced 992 rental and 472 for sale MPDUs. From 2000 to 2024, this came out to an average of 40 rental and 19 for sale units annually. And of these units produced, affordability restrictions have expired on 109 rental and 25 for sale MPDUs. But looking forward, there are projects in the pipeline that are expected to add additional rental and for sale MPDUs. So a major finding that is reflected in the figures on the previous slide are, while on average the program produces around 60 units annually, it's not evenly distributed over time. So neither is the mix of tenure for MPDU MPDUs produced. So for example, following the housing market crash, 0 for sale MPDUs were sold between 2011 and 2019. So again, because IZ production is to some extent driven by the market, it's proven to be somewhat of an unstable source of affordable housing on a year-to-year basis. Sorry. That being said, it's also important to consider the production of MPDUs within the context of the broader housing market, as IZ programs can have significant impacts on housing developers, market rate housing consumers, and governments. So in this section, I analyze its impact on all three of these groups, and I'll start here with developers. So there's a long-standing argument in the literature on IZ that inclusionary unit requirements raise the cost of housing development. Authors argue that developers might absorb these extra costs, or they may pass it along to market rate consumers. But in some cases, the extra cost may simply make projects infeasible. So to explore these various economic impacts, I use the so-called 5 L's of development, which are labor, land, lumber, laws, and lending. So first, to begin with labor, I'll go over each of these briefly. So the price of labor is largely driven by local labor markets, and as such, localities with higher living costs and labor regulations are likely to have higher labor costs as a result. Here, inclusionary zoning programs are unlikely to really change the cost in either direction for developers. But next is land. So essentially what a developer is willing to pay for land is the market value of land, or the residual land value. And this is determined by calculating how much the developer has left after deducting all other costs from the expected value of the completed project. Here, IZ requirements may reduce the value of completed projects and therefore reduce the residual land value. So in some cases, the landowner may accept a lower price for the property, but they may also hold on to the property in hopes of larger returns in the future. The third category is lumber, and this is very similar to labor. The price that developers pay for materials are influenced by national and even global markets. Municipalities can, however, influence what building materials must be used through local building codes and design standards. I did find that some IZ programs do require inclusionary units to be identical in every respect to market rate units in those developments. And in these cases, less stringent cosmetic design standards for inclusionary units may reduce some of their cost. And the fourth category is laws. And here what I'm really talking about is the entitlement and permitting process. So the length of this process can have a significant impact on project cost and feasibility. Uncertainty created by discretionary or slow approvals associated with IZ essentially increases the risk of losing pre-development capital and leads developers to actually demand larger profit margins. And then lastly is lending. So to cover the construction cost of a multifamily project, developers must finance their costs with a combination of debt and equity. And there's two things to consider here. First, IZ affordability requirements effectively lower a project's expected net operating income by lowering its income from rent or sales because of those inclusionary units. And this essentially means that lenders will likely offer smaller loans to IZ projects compared to projects with no affordability restrictions. And second, absent any subsidies, this remaining gap in financing must be filled with equity, which in part comes from project investors as well as a small amount provided by the developer. And here, developers must promise a return to investors that are as much dictated by national and global financial markets as by local markets. And it often has little to do with how much the profit a developer is actually expected to make here. But again, I go over all these development categories in more detail in the report. So the effects on developers that I just described are really static effects. So in other words, if you hold all else equal, what are the direct impacts on developers? But in reality, the effects of imposing additional costs on developers play out in a more dynamic environment. So developers often cross-subsidize inclusionary units with market rate units to recover lost revenue. and therefore raising prices for market rate consumers. Research indicates that this is most likely to occur in jurisdictions with inelastic housing demand. So those are jurisdictions where housing alternatives are scarce or where individuals are willing to pay a premium to be located near certain amenities. And one proxy for housing inelasticity and housing alternatives is vacancy rates. So a homeowner vacancy rate of 1 to 2% is and a rental vacancy rate of 7 to 8% is generally understood to represent a market in which demand for housing matches supply relatively well. So for context, in the city of Rockville, the vacancy rate is estimated at 0.8% for owner-occupied units and 3% for renter-occupied units. Additionally, others suppose that IZ programs have the potential to increase market rate prices across an entire market if IZ requirements reduced aggregate market rate housing supply. And here again, research findings on IZ's impact on the aggregate market rate housing production levels are mixed, but many studies do find an association between IZ and higher market rate home prices, including a recent study done in the DC metro area. So last, I do want to consider also the economic impacts on local governments. So like I mentioned earlier, many jurisdictions offer incentives to offset the cost of providing below market rate units. So these incentives may include a density bonus, waivers or deferrals of impact fees, tax deferment, expedited permitting, zoning variances, and other regulatory concessions that reduce developers' cost. While offering these incentives has been found to be an effective strategy for increasing inclusionary unit production, it can create real cost for the public sector. So for example, when jurisdictions grant fee waivers or tax deferrals, revenues that would otherwise go into a city's general fund are being redirected towards IZ programs. And even seemingly free incentives such as a density bonus may result in increased infrastructure and other public costs. So it's important to understand these three perspectives as each actor is likely to bear some of the costs of providing inclusionary units, and careful program design can ultimately dictate how these costs are distributed among them. So the final subject of the report in this presentation is the racial and economic diversity outcomes of IZ. So in addition to the affordability goal, inclusionary zoning also seeks to increase racial and economic diversity in neighborhoods and communities. And while this aspect has received considerably less research attention, several studies point to positive outcomes, including higher lifetime earnings and better educational outcomes for children. And the available research also indicates that IZ can foster integration and lead to meaningful outcomes, although it is somewhat context dependent. So, for example, it may depend on things like the method for allocating IZ units. So in other words, is there a lottery system, a wait list, or a preference for city residents? And it may also depend on where IZ units are actually being built. So you may be able to produce a significant number of IZ units, but if they're not located in neighborhoods with high-performing schools, for example, you may not see the same positive outcomes. So lastly, to conclude, I would just like to reiterate that inclusionary zoning does provide long-term stability for MPDU tenants and homeowners through deed-restricted affordability. And as I just mentioned, it can also improve life outcomes for tenants, as well as offer individuals who have previously experienced barriers to homeownership an opportunity to build wealth. But as was reflected in the housing gap analysis, there is still significant need for more units that are affordable to households earning less than 30% of the AMI. And the city's MPDU program, as currently designed, is unlikely to reach far enough down to these households. Another point to consider is that developers do not always absorb the cost of IZ. And in a city like Rockville with high housing demand, it is likely that at least part of the cost is being passed along to these market rate consumers. I'll close with one last thing. Effective IZ programs leverage developer incentives, but this also prevents the wide-scale adoption of beneficial policies. So for example, relaxing parking requirements is an effective IZ incentive because it can significantly reduce the cost of development. But for that to be the case, one could argue that if more housing is the goal, parking requirements should be relaxed for all developments, not just those subject to IZ requirements. But of course, if this were to happen, it would no longer be an incentive. And the same thing applies for expedited permitting and many other incentives offered to IZ. But with that, I'd like to once again thank you for your time and attention, and I will now hand it back to Jane.
Thank you very much. All right, so this is as I stated at the beginning, the very beginning of our research into a very complex policy area. But our next steps, timeline-wise, is to begin the engagement for the wholesale MPDU code rewrite in spring 2026. And in between now and then, we will continue to engage in research with other graduate students, as well as through the upcoming housing needs assessment. We're really looking forward to this as an opportunity to inform the rewrite by having even stronger understanding of market conditions and how certain changes to the program could affect the overall housing market. And then with that process, once we really get into it, we will be engaging with MPDU renters and homeowners, developers, and the community. We certainly want to leave no stone unturned hearing about folks' engagement or lack of engagement with the MPDU program. So now to circle back to requested feedback. So we're framing this as, do you agree with staff that the city should, one, continue to have an inclusionary zoning program? And for a myriad of reasons, staff believe that we should. I think above all, that it is the primary source of affordable housing production in the city. The next three items here are all about exploring. We don't necessarily have concrete recommendations for you at this time, but we want to know what direction, where should we really focus our research as we go forward. So second is to explore policies that lessen the cost burden of an IZ program on market rate renters and home buyers, while balancing the need to incentivize housing development. And as Colin spoke about, things like that can look like property tax abatements, density bonuses, recognizing that we do have an existing density bonus program and height bonus in town center, but should we tweak that in order to make it right size to get the type of production that we are looking for? Three is to explore a flexible payment in lieu option while prioritizing the construction of income restricted units. Right now, we do have a payment in lieu option, but it's pretty strict and narrow in the terms of when that can apply to a project. So that's something we're interested in looking at. Is there a way to adjust that to make it a little bit more flexible? But at the end of the day, we do really want actual units for people to live in that are affordable. 4, explore ways to target lower incomes. As Colin demonstrated, there's a deep need for affordable units at the lowest end of the income spectrum. And then as well as improve reliability of the program. Right now, there's a lot of room for negotiation when we're working with developers to create an MPDU program agreement. And sometimes that means that we get units at a certain level, but we wish we could have gotten more at a lower level or vice versa. And I think for both staff and for the developer side, we're interested in ways that we can be a little bit more prescriptive with the requirements as a way to lead to less negotiation and hopefully have more concrete outcomes for the goals that we've set here. And with that, that is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all the background research. I also wanted to just note that the city's comprehensive plan does have a 10-part policy 10 section on Raleigh price dwelling units with actions 10.1 through 10.8. So it looks like we might revisit that and expand upon it, but I do want to at least reference that foundation. And some of my colleagues have printouts here. I want to start off with saying thank you. I also want to start out by saying, giving Montgomery County some credit here. Montgomery County was the first inclusionary zoning pioneer for Raleigh price dwelling units back in the 1970s, and they have since produced thousands of these units. So from someone who has grown up in around areas where poverty was grouped and not blended in, I think there's so many societal benefits to having programs like this that are access to schools, more equitable distribution across jurisdiction, as well as just life benefits. And there's so many stories of people who have benefited through the years by finding an apartment like this or a home like this. So I just wanted to give kudos to the county for where it started. I had two clarifying comments, and then I'll go to your questions, and then I have some other questions that I'll pause and let my colleagues go first and come back to. There was a comment about the bonus density not being taken up yet. We just sort of implemented that with the Rockville Town Center plan, and then previously with the amendment, the floating zone map amendment. So we don't know where that will go. Hopefully that will incentivize some people to take advantage of the bonus density, but I also think that's probably an issue of marketing as well. We haven't really proactively reached out to say, hey, did you know about this program? I know I have done some of it. I know Reddy has, but just putting more of a focus and seeing if we can attract people who might be interested in that program by some proactive land use outreach. The other piece I'll note is there was a comment about the AMI usage. So there was a building like last September that was built, and they did not have to do that different income range from the 50 to 120 AMI, average median income, and that's because they have a developer's rights agreement. So they were governed. So we have created new units since then, but it hasn't applied for this new policy yet. And the city has been on a journey of updating its Molly Price dwelling unit program. So I know previous councils have adjusted it from 15 to 120. This council has lowered the threshold to 20 units as in accordance with the comprehensive plan. I know we also work to make it citywide a 15% requirement. It used to be 12.5% in other areas that were near transit. We also increased it to 99 years. We lost about 100 units in the King Farm community in particular, not by anything nefarious, it's just they had fulfilled what they were required to do. And then the other big thing, Councilmember Miles and I remember this, is we saw during COVID someone who just went over the income and had to move in 90 days, and that really hit hard. And so we talked about, we created a change so that there's an opportunity to graduate, so you have 6 months to find a new home, because it's not that easy to find a new home. So I just wanted to share the journey we've been on, and the journey continues. I'll pause with some of my other comments, but just to answer your questions, for me, obviously, is one, yes. I don't know where my colleagues are, but I think I have a good guess of where they're going to be on this one. The exploring policies that lessen the cost burden, I do think that we need to look at things like expedited permitting and making sure projects go faster. And I think it's not just the Molly Price dwelling unit program, but there's also things like LIHTC, the low-income tax credit. There are other ways to get affordable units that are actually even more focused on the 30% AMI, average median income. So I want to make sure as we're thinking about Molly Price dwelling unit, we also know that there are other tools to get deeper affordability. And I do think that we should look at density bonuses. Like we talked about neighborhood shopping centers, and I know that's going to come up in our zoning discussions, but that's another way to try to get more of those kinds of units. And I think obviously the biggest way to get more of these units is to build more housing and find ways to incentivize this. And I think some of your comments on maybe trades on reduced parking to get more affordability and looking at fee waivers for qualifying projects. We didn't go into this today, but I know that in the past housing sessions we've talked about TIFs and pilots as is something that you all would bring to us to explore. We have to fund the city and keep us going, so I have to think about the finances on that, but also maybe applying it specifically to the affordable units so we can get some of them. I know it's very expensive to build these affordable units, but we need them. We need them for our teachers, our police officers. Number 3 gives me pause, I'll be honest, because I do know it's hard to get those units. And some of us were here when there was an issue, and we haven't even talked about this yet, but there is housing that is focused on general population, which is rental and ownership, but they're also kind of assisted living senior facilities that have grappled with this issue of the Molly Price dwelling unit, which applies to them, but they haven't been able to always produce those units in practice because their fees are really high. So I think we haven't figured out an answer to that. When you have services tied to that particular building, and I think they did a payment in lieu. So, and we were able to apply that to our Housing Opportunities Fund, and then we were able to roll those funds to save affordable units that might have not been saved. So I know this is a nuanced question, but for me, it's not. It depends on what you're proposing. I don't want to lose the ability to create units, but I do recognize the unique situations where we're never really going to get that unit. Explore ways to target lower incomes and improve reliability. I think this is in combination with LIHTC, but I also want to say the county does have higher incomes in some of their MPDU allowances, and we also know that teachers and police officers sometimes are just in that cutoff period and can't fully take advantage. And so I do want to think about that workforce level of housing as well. So I know we did move it to 120, but I want to see what you all think about, should we look at our income ceiling a little bit differently to allow some of the people who serve our community and protect us every day. So I'll end there, and then I'll let my colleagues speak up, and then I have some questions and ideas to follow. Councilmember Fulton.
Thank you, and thank you for this presentation. In looking at your feedback, I mean, yes, we should have inclusionary zoning. Yes to number 2. Yes to number 3. Yes to number 4. So yes across the board to exploring. The two things that I do want to just call attention to, I really appreciated the last thing you said on number 4 on improving reliability, and you said can we be more prescriptive and less negotiation? I'm very much in favor of that. I think that we should be transparent on the front end of like, what kind of, the mayor said trades. Like, yeah, we should be clear, but we should be clear on the front end and not make it one-off negotiations. I think that should be within our written plans, so we all know it up front what you get for what, not in a one-off waiver request. I think that benefits everybody. The other thing that I was intrigued by was the table in your report that does show that we've got admirably sort of, I don't know if it's more stringent or more aggressive MPDU requirements, which reflects our desire for more affordable housing. But I am really curious about the income, and I'm cautious about the impact on overall housing build, right? And you made a reference to that there as well. So I just want to make sure, there was a line in here somewhere that said, like, the more the requirements, the less actual units get built. That makes me really nervous. So in whatever it is that we're doing, I want to be really careful that we're not inadvertently decreasing the overall amount of housing and therefore the overall amount of MPDUs by being too aggressive in that front. So thanks.
Dr. Miles, and then I didn't see who went up first. Councilmember Shaw, and then Councilmember Van Grack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks to my colleague for the comments. Thank you all for the presentation. I thank staff for the 3 presentations we've had thus far on housing. We've made some great progress, and I look forward to continuing the discussion. As was noted at the top, MPDUs only provide a fraction of affordable housing, but it's the best we have here in Rockville, and I think it's incumbent, given that approximately 1,500 units between both rental and home ownership models that have been created since its inception, that any proposed changes to it, we must, be very mindful about and make sure we have done our due diligence. It sounds like this is the beginning of a conversation that we'll continue to have through the spring, with the hope of getting more data. And I think that's very important. I think what was presented was a great start. I do have some, questions and/or concerns about some of the implications of it. I mean, I can answer the feedback, but my concerns bring to my mind the fact that, as was pointed out, we do need to have more discussion about this, and I look forward to it. I think bringing even more nuanced information to bear if we're going to make significant or make changes to this program, again, that provides a significant amount of the affordable housing that we do have here in the city. Just things, again, just point things out. This is not to be ticky-tack, but it's just to show that there is a bit of nuance that I think can be captured if we continue to have discussions and get more data. And I'll propose a way to go about getting that data. But when you look at the 5L slide that you pointed out earlier, there's assumption that land will necessarily be or will be devalued if you have inclusionary zoning. That's not necessarily true. It kind of depends on where it is, right? It's a function of location. So, for example, in Bethesda, where you can charge upwards of $5,500 for a market rate rental unit, doesn't really matter. You get further up county, it might make more of a difference. So there's a bit of nuance in there that I think we should be mindful of if we're going to make changes as outlined. Similarly, the laws. I mean, there are few laws that are specific, as I know. Again, that guide how prescriptive we can be with regard to MPDUs. I think there's like a square footage requirement, like 1,200 square feet. But beyond that, there's not a whole lot. So to suggest that stringent laws may somehow reduce inclusion or MPDs specifically, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's something that can be debated, and again, having a more nuanced conversation. And then the lending part kind of goes back to the land part. Loan offerings are a function more, I believe, of the location of the property as opposed to just is there inclusionary zoning or not. Again, you go down the street in Bethesda where you can get market rate units in the 5,000s for rentals. It's less of an issue. So to answer the questions 1 through 4, I agree. I mean, I think many of us up here would be supportive of inclusionary zoning. But again, I would argue with the premise in number 2 that just because there's inclusionary zoning doesn't necessarily mean that the cost is directly passed on to the market rate units. The developer will sell those units at as high as the market will demand. Stated otherwise, to get to points 2 and 4 kind of almost contradict each other. To say that we can't get lower to target lower incomes. I mean, if premise number 2 was accurate, they can create all the units at 30%. They would just overcharge the market rate units, but that actually isn't what's happening because the market dictates how much they can sell or rent those units out. So again, these are all in the weeds questions, but I think what I'm trying to get at, I'm being super verbose, so I'm gonna shut up in a little bit, is that it just suggests we need to get more data. I think staff is open to that. And I would take it a step further. I think it's important that we get not only, certainly getting the public's opinion, those who currently reside in MPDUs here in the city. I think it's important to get developer input. It's also good to get the banking, the financing input. And I think folks who are best positioned, in addition to planners, people who do this for a living day in, day out, striking these deals, putting the deals together that bring large or even small, but particular significant amounts of MPD units online. So to get to that, I would recommend, and again, we can discuss this at the end after my colleagues make more comments, I would propose actually sending out a request for a proposal, get like a consultant to just give us the lay of the land, both regionally, Montgomery County, and then specifically for Rockville, to be able to answer some of the nuance that I point out. Perhaps I'm wrong on these issues, but I think they are debatable. But I think before making potential changes to our MPDU ordinance as outlined, I would like even more nuanced data. So I'll again propose bringing a consultant on board, but I'll hold my fire for now. That's all. That was way too long.
Councilmember Shaw.
Just to confirm, Councilmember Miles, was that a motion? That was a motion?
Yeah, I'll be making a motion at the end, but
Okay.
I'm gonna let it,
I
have folks
Well,
opine and make a motion. Thank y'all.
Thank you. If we could leave motions to the end, or it's a work session, so I want to also have staff respond to that as well. so they can share feedback with us. But let's go with our general questions and feedback on these slides. And then Dr. Miles, I know we'll come back to you. Thank you. Councilman Shaw.
Just noting offhand that I will support that. So I thank you to staff, and thank you, Mr. Maloney, for developing the paper. That was a lot of information, and so I appreciate that. I did note a few things around cost burden because with the previous work session with the rent stabilization, a lot of data came up, including that about 50% of Rockville rents, and I think it was actually more than nearly half, I think it was 56% of renters are cost burden, and the majority of those renters are in market rate housing. I will say, MPDUs, I strongly support them. I think we need more. That goes to question one. However, MPDUs will never, ever, just because of the way that they are structured, they will never, ever be able to fully meet the needs of those that need affordable housing. So we always have to do that with other mechanisms like rent stabilization. And I would also say some going back to some of the racial, you said that there was limited information around the racial and economic findings. The county has a lot of findings around racial and economic, around MPDUs. They've been doing this for a long time, especially from their Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice. And I found some interesting just feedback around the racial breakdown around cost burden renters, just for the county, and Rockville typically follows some of the similar trends, but the overwhelming majority of those that are cost burden are Black and Brown, and the overwhelming majority of those that own development firms are white. And I think it was like 82% of the firms. And I think that's something important to take into account when we're thinking about the social equity impact statements that we should make. And then I know that we're looking at 120 AMI, and I think that was from the previous council, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
I think there was some changes made to that even before Dr. Miles and I were on. But
Okay.
we did actually reduce it and go to 50% AMI.
Okay,
So they expanded upward in income, we expanded lower in income. It's been a journey.
Okay, so currently it's 120.
It's 50% to 120, but in
Okay.
practice right now on units that are built, it's I think 60 to 80.
Okay.
Yeah. For rental.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I know it was going back and forth. One of the concerns that I have in the way that the program is administered is that it's administered by either the developer or the corporate landlord making the selection. And what I'm hearing just like in the community is oftentimes they don't make enough, even though they fulfill criteria, the income criteria, oftentimes they don't make enough because like what was shared in your report, oftentimes the developer or corporate landlord want to make the decision on who has the least risk, so they'll pick folks that have the highest income, often better credit, often all of the things that can have an impact on economic diversity. And so I think when we have such a high income level, I think that's one of the things that we just have to think about and explore. And then also just the several barriers that people go through. I mean, MPDUs are, it's a mean testing model of a way of getting scarce housing. And so the time it takes to apply, there's language barriers, sometimes it's difficult to find online. So again, the folks with the most resources are the ones that are able to get more access to the housing. And just to confirm, when building new housing, because those numbers are stark in terms of folks that are cost burdened and needing housing now, it does take 2 to 5 years to build new housing, right? The time.
I am not up to date on the most recent numbers on
Okay.
how long it takes, but that sounds about right.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to confirm because I know this is a really important program for the future and like a long-term strategy in terms of addressing our affordability. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to speak to 2 to 4 or not at this time?
So I do agree with all of these, generally speaking, but I would like to have more nuanced information. Back to Dr. Miles' point.
Thank you. Councilmember Van Grack.
So first, it's a yes for all 4, but it's a nuance. As my colleagues have said, this is a balancing game. There is no question we need to ensure that we've got reasonable, affordable housing and not discourage people from accessing that reasonable housing. And I think as we've discussed, we've discussed in work sessions, we've discussed, there are sometimes problems with paperwork. There's sometimes problems with unique types of income. And there's problems with sometimes people meeting it, not meeting it, meeting it at a time. And sometimes when we've had COVID, there needs to be an understanding of those nuances. In the same vein, we also need to encourage development. We've been discussing this in numerous of our housing work sessions, that without development, we're not going to get more housing. And as we know, we create naturally affordable housing by encouraging a lot of development. And over time, those development and those housing units become naturally affordable housing. So there's a balancing act, right? We can't just have everything in the city be affordable and to the lowest income, and we can't not have affordable housing policies in the city. So as we're going through this, we have to understand those balancing goals. And to Dr. Miles' point, which I think is a great one, if we're doing the 1 through 4 and we're saying yes, we've got to start. We've been provided with an excellent start with the data that you provided here. But I think what that is a start. We need to evaluate and understand what has been working in other communities that we can adjust with regard to what we're doing and make it more efficient. There's no question. We've heard complaints. We understand we can do a better job. You know, as we've heard, our county was among the first in the entire nation to go this direction. We can look at not only what's happened here, but look at how we can make it better. And to Dr. Miles' point, you know, there are a lot of people all over the country that really have a degree of analysis and code provisions. If we're really going to be looking towards the spring of 2026 through a serious code writing, let's make sure we get it right. And similarly, I would propose, and I don't know if a consultant or an expert can look at this, there might need to be nuances and adjustments based on market conditions, based on situations that occur like COVID, like the housing fallout. We saw what happened with the housing fallout in your chart. Beautifully put together chart, which showed us there was a period of time that because of market forces, we weren't getting MPDUs. What does that mean? Is there something that occurred in that time period that we can incorporate within our code to allow us to provide affordable housing and or encourage development when something like that happens? Now, I'm not a housing expert. I know I'm not a housing expert. So again, to Dr. Miles' point, which I think is a very good point, is there someone out there that can provide some of these nuances to get it done? And similarly, it goes to kind of one of the questions I had. In one of your slides that you put forward, you talked about the open rental units and the open housing units, which I think the rental was the housing was 0.8 and rental was about 3%. And I don't know if you know the answer to this, because I'd like to know, are there certain things within our MPDU policy, our affordable housing policy, that we can address that? Because I know that there are things that we can do with the incoming units, but is there a way that we can address the units that are out there that are not being utilized some way?
take that. So that number that you're referring to is the overall housing vacancy rate?
Correct, yeah.
And so with that, Rockville has a very low vacancy rate for residential housing. A more healthy rental vacancy rate is usually at around 5%, but we're below that at 3%. So at this point, I don't think that staff would necessarily recommend taking action. There are actions that can be taken in places where vacancies are a bigger problem, of having a vacancy tax. There are various policy tools, but because the vacancy rate is so low in the city, that's not really an issue that we're facing at the moment.
Okay, great. So again, 1 through 4, I'm a yes, but because there's a balancing act and some of 2 and 4 and 3, we can't do everything. And so I would want to look at ways in which we can make things better, encouraging development at the same time, making sure that we can maximize the use of our MPD units and our programs to encourage. And to the extent it could be helpful through a consultant, I think that's an excellent idea.
Mr. Mihalik, I think you wanted to say something.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick reminder, the request for a consultant, we're about to start work with a consultant. If you guys remember, it's the housing needs assessment. And that's going to go very rich, very deep into the data that will absolutely inform our review of the MPDU program. I think it'll get us to where we need. So when we would bring this back in the spring with some potential specific code amendments, it would include a lot of the data that we're going to get during the housing needs assessment. If we still think there's gaps in that, after that, certainly receptive to bring in a consultant. But I think Councilmember Van Grack brings up a good point. If we're going to make changes to the code, and we'll likely recommend some, it's really important after probably a period of 2 years to see if those code changes had an incentivizing effect on MPDU production, or did it do the opposite? Did it have a chilling effect on it? That's really important because we may not get it exactly right, but we got to test it. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Valeri.
Okie doke. No, I appreciate that as well, having heard about the housing needs assessment through the Human Services Advisory Commission. I think it's going to get very deep and very disaggregated as well, so that we'll get some very good information out of it. I agree. There are a lot of issues in the implementation of the MPDU program. I think that several of us have raised that should new units come online soon, the less we could scramble to look at these agreements, the better it would be. So even just having some conversation on that, both like a 500 miles up version as well as a little bit more granular would be helpful. But I'm thinking through just some ideas. Frankly, even looking, these are much higher level macro policies. One thing I do want to explore more is this idea of the intense economic segregation in the city, and how can we look at the program, look at IZ or the MPDU program, and try to do as much as we can, given that, frankly, we can't do much to affect income inequality on like a greater scale, since we don't have control over employers. What can we do? So I would be curious to know the idea of the high income planning area requirement that the county has, where the county starts at 12.5%, whereas we start at 15%, but then they have areas of higher income where the requirement for the number of MPDUs increases. I'd be curious about that because we are literally ringed on the western edge, and to a certain extent the southern edge of the city, by a bunch of these sort of planning areas. So I don't see, like, it's North Bethesda, Potomac, Triviola, I'm blanking on another one. Anyway, so I would be curious about that. is basically census tracts that have a median household income of at least 150% of the countywide median household income at the time that, well, for them, the planning board accepts an application. So I would be curious. They go from 12 to 15 for those regions. So it would be for us maybe 15 to 17 or something like that. But what impact would that have on development? Because again, our only real focus in the MPDU program is on proximity to transit. That's really not going to do as much, I think, to kind of break the logjam of higher incomes and lower incomes in the city, and the racial disparities as well, that are very acute, and especially when you look at census tract data. So that would be something interesting to look at. I would be interested to know, because there's one that I am familiar with, but how many times have we seen projects where it comes in just under that threshold so that there's no PDUs that are required? So I'm thinking of a couple off the top of my head, not going to name and shame, but I don't know if there's anything we can do in those circumstances, but that is a loss of MPDU units because the developer may or may not want to be doing that. The other thing is, maybe instead of looking at more regulations or restrictions, we look at higher incentives. So what is an incentive that would push a developer to build the MPDU unit and the market rate unit using the same materials? There is a major project in the city where we know that has occurred. There is no difference between the MPDU unit and the market rate unit. And this is an entity with a pretty good track record. So how is it possible that they can do it, A, and, last I checked, they're still very much in the development industry. I would like to see if there are ways that we could incentivize that and maybe make that a little bit more palatable, perhaps, to folks. I also am really tired of seeing the situations with the MPDU units throughout the city where we see inherent issues with the site plan inequities, and any way that we can get ahead of that, I think would be really, really helpful. That's kind of where I'm trying to think of more positive ideas. I think it's very easy to list the issues. I think it's always hard to come up with the solutions. So I am for, of course, I'm for continuing to have IZ. I think it's critical, and I am up for exploring any idea or option as long as we have all the information to make that decision.
So you're good on 2 through 4 with nuances.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really just saying, yeah, let's explore these things. I'm not necessarily off the cuff saying no, because I'd like to dig in a little bit more and hear from staff more on these things too going forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. So let me start off by saying thank you for the presentation and all the work that you did to put it together. I think it was, I read through the report, and it was really thorough, and you had a lot of information and sites in the report. I want to start off with a question about you have a slide, report findings, figure number 2. And I don't know if you know the answer to this, maybe staff does. What happened in 2015 to make the number of MPDUs so high?
I'm not sure which project that would be. Oh.
I think it was like the town center apartment. Many of those came online. Town Square, rather. Okay. Multiple of those came online around that time, 2015.
Yeah, I was just curious. Thank you, Dr. Miles. All right, so I went last, but actually, long ago, I wrote down 2 things: need data, and it's nuanced. So I think we all have repeated those points ad nauseum, but because I think it really it does need data, and it is a nuanced question. But I'll be brave. I'm a yes on all the questions. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm a yes. I think we should do everything possible to increase the housing stock, and I totally associate myself with the comments of Councilmember Van Grack. I think we need to do everything possible at the less amount of AMI, and as the higher rates as well. I think we need housing stock of all kinds because that is going to make our city more diverse, and it's going to lower the housing prices in the future.
Councilmember Shaw.
So I just wanted to suggest a model that they use in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Cambridge is similar size to Rockville, and they also have a housing scarcity problem as well. And so in Cambridge, they have an MPTU program where they have a certain percentage for low income, and then they have a certain percentage for middle income or workforce or working class income. And so I think it's something like 15 and 10, 15 lower income and then 10% middle income. And the reason they separate that is because oftentimes the developer who's making the decision will pick those that have the highest income. So combining it all in one block, you can sometimes price out folks that are middle income, or you can you can price out folks that are lower income, and then also it provides stability for the middle income folks as well. I'm not sure how they pencil that all out, but it's just, I just wanted to provide that as a suggestion to help to maintain our workforce housing, and that 10% does serve like the teachers, civil servants, police, and firefighters.
Would that be, so 10 plus 15, so that's 25%?
Yes, I have to go back to the numbers, but there's a certain amount allotted for the different incomes.
Thank you. I have a question that I had on my list too that relates, and I kind of talked about how do we serve people with who are in the 30% to 50% AMI, and I recognize that LIHTC is an important part of that. It's not just going to be Molly-priced dwelling units. I will share that I got a lot of pushback personally when we did the 50, and even had othering comments, and I had to share, well, I was one of those people. So I know Councilman Valeri remembers that discussion, Dr. Miles as well, because we had those discussions. But I do think that we need to find ways to look at both sides, and I mentioned that comment as well. So I appreciate the note with balancing of, we don't want no units, like we do want some units, so we don't want to have such a chilling effect that nothing gets built. But I did want to ask for you all, I believe that you set aside, in talking to the previous housing director, there are some requirements of like how many are in the 50 and 80 and then 120, but can you just describe that process of they don't just get to pick through the range, but there's a certain amount of units. Can you let us know how that is currently being done and what you're thinking?
There's nothing prescribed by the regulations, and so practices can change as staff changes. Right now, we put forth a recommendation to the developer on the outset for what we would like to see, and then the developer comes back to us with their proposal of how they would want to adjust that, or maybe they accept our initial proposal, but then it's a back and forth conversation that we have until we're eventually able to settle on something that both parties can agree to.
So there are designated percentages within the AMI, but it's a negotiation.
There are ones that we try to start with just
Yeah.
in our practice, but there's nothing prescribed in the code or in regulations. And I can't necessarily say that the ones that we're currently following, I'm not sure whether or not those are the same as the previous director, but we try to we try to push for as many units at the lowest end of the income spectrum as we can, because we know that's where the greatest need is.
Thank you. Yeah, and are you proposing that you will adjust the code to be more prescriptive on that? Was that one of the examples of where you want to have more clarity?
Exactly. That's something that we're certainly interested in, is having that be a part of either the code or regulations, that we do have certain percentages for certain incomes.
Okay, that is helpful. I appreciate you mentioning the housing needs assessment and seeing what data comes out of that. Will they specifically analyze some parts of the Maui price dwelling unit program so that we're getting some of the data that my colleagues have been talking about?
If they're not, we will ask them to.
Please do. Okay. All right. I wanted to check on a couple things. I wrote down a review quote that I've read. To get an MPDU, you need to be to bribe a leasing agent or call every single day. So I actually did work with a volunteer who called around just to see who had units for rental. And I know that we have an established process for the homeownership side, but on the rental side, it's frustrating. I've personally experienced it. I know a volunteer I work with did as well. And it's like, no, we don't keep it waiting. Let's call back again tomorrow. That's not good customer service. People who are trying to find affordable housing is a challenge. So one of the questions I previously sent is, can we require a wait list for the rentals?
We could. Anything is possible. And we certainly want to look at all of those types of questions when we do this comprehensive rewrite. So that's something that we intend to look at and to consider, as well as what types of implications that would be for staff capacity.
Right. And it could be that, I know that there's a staff capacity. It could also be that you're requiring them to keep a wait list. I don't know. I'm not being prescriptive, but just saying there should be a wait list. And it shouldn't be that people have to call back every day. That doesn't seem fair or nice. The other thing is, it's always hard, and I know you guys try to negotiate like how many bedrooms are in each of the new apartments that are being developed. And I just also want to explore how we can get some of those 3 bedrooms, which are hard to find. Usually they're smaller units, and we have families who need access to these as well. So I don't know if you've had time to think about, or this is something you've already solved, of how we could get more bedrooms so that we're having that diversity in the building going forward.
Not something we've solved yet, but certainly yet another thing that we want to think more about.
Okay. There are a couple of issues we've experienced that make things hard to sell for homeownership or create conflict or less than desirable conditions. So we had experiences with garage issues or tandem parking, one bathroom in the entire townhome, but you have to go all the way upstairs. So are you proposing to look at that as well, so that we are not just providing a unit, but providing a usable unit for people?
Yes, and that's something that we're currently doing as well.
This is a more macro question, and it may be more of a planning question, but have we been able to project how many units we anticipate with our pipeline?
At this point, I would have to get back to you with those numbers and define exactly what we're looking at with the pipeline, but we can get back to you relatively soon with those numbers.
Okay, that would be really helpful. I do think that, I don't know what the frequency is. I don't want to be prescriptive on that, and that's something I'd like your expertise on, but I think that we should have reflection points on, how are we doing periodically with the policies we're putting in place. We have permit, but are they actually getting built? So just kind of looking at some annual reporting or whatever that frequency is on units created, AMI served, geographic diversity, because some jurisdictions also look at geographic equity mapping to see where units are being developed and not, so that we're not doing, surrogation in another way. So I just wanted to raise that as well. I do love that our city policy requires that they're not distinguishable from the exterior. We also don't want to other people in their own community, so I would like to see us keep that. I mentioned the comments on the wait list already. I tend to prefer the on-site MPDUs versus,
it would be very hard for us to build and really with the money we're getting to build a new building. So I just think that's something we have to think through, and there may be some nuances there. I also was curious about how ADUs would play into, it's not necessarily an MPDU, but we talked about housing strategies where we might incentivize affordable units and those kinds of as well. Like I think there was a Napa example that I had shared, but I think we have to think holistically because we're not going to solve the problem with one strategy. But I'm hopeful that staff is adding that to the list. I'm just looking at my list here. Those are my major comments. I think this is very well done. I am excited about this, that we're moving forward on our housing strategies, our 40-point housing strategies. I think this is an important part of it. And there are some things in the comprehensive plan that I would like to get our current staff's understanding on what you like to do. Like there's a comment about, do we do 10 units versus 20? So I don't know that's the kind of balancing. Are we not going to get any housing because it's so low, or can we actually get more affordable units? The other issue that I think is important that I've heard from MPDU homeowners, and an issue that was being explored is the 30-year requirement and whether that's an issue. I also saw in the staff report there was a potential of not allowing people to potentially take out HELOCs, home equity line of credits. I have mixed feelings about that. I don't want people foreclosing on their properties, but I know that people sometimes take out home equity line of credits to help their kid go to school or to buy their next home. I don't want to remove wealth building opportunities for people who are rising and progressing in life, also considering we don't want these to foreclose and not be used. So I think it's a balancing act, so I wanted to specifically comment on that. The other piece is I've heard from MPDU homeowners is the life staging, and so people who may have had MPDUs and now their children are grown or they're seniors, they want to move to a smaller unit, but it's not financially, they're in the back of the list and not financially possible. So I think this is not going to be solved today. I know it's a statewide and maybe a national discussion is how do we incentivize right-sizing housing for people through their life stages, because that would free up a unit for a family who needs that 3 and 4 bedroom. So those are some of my top level. I could talk for 3 hours on this, and I won't do that tonight. But I want to say I appreciate all the thorough feedback on this, and I think there's a lot more to dig through. Councilmember Shaw.
And I'll be super quick. I just wanted to add a few data points that I was interested in, just to throw out there. I wanted to see the impact of the voucher program on the lower income need, because I know that there is less federal funding, but that's one program that HUD is not pushing back on. So the voucher I want to see how that the 30% AMI is impacted by the voucher program. Also, in terms of those that are cost burden, I tried to do the math myself, and I think it's around 17,000 residents in Rockville, but it's good to get the overall scope so we can know how we're chipping away at that amount based on the units, based on everything that we're doing, so we can actually evaluate if we are actually improving the affordability in Rockville. And then it would also be good throughout this whole our housing process to also look at the historic background. I know we spoke about the geographical segregation, but also like the racial segregation, urban renewal, racial covenants, all of that has led to this point. And then also getting some data on the application attrition, like how many folks are starting the application and then they don't finish, because I think there's a lot of barriers there. And I think that's one way to see just the overall process and the experience of residents going through that. And that's something that you may get when you get your input session with MPDU owners and renters.
You made me think of a couple other things. I'll be really fast. Can we look at, there are units that are out there that are not built yet. Do we poke and say, hey, what's going on with that? Or is there a way to like incentivize to say, you'll get this benefit, but only if you build by? We've got to get some of these units moving. I know that we have done some in 2024 and there's some in process. We have some MPDU home ownership opportunities right now, if anyone's listening, in the King Farm Farmstead, and there's more coming with Rockshire and Halpine. But we also, because these do take some time, we got to start working on the next set. And so I just want to see, do we do anything to clear log jams or understand what the log jams are so that we can get that housing in play for people? And you talked about the vacancy rate, right? We do need to create more opportunity. So I just wanted to see if that's a possibility.
I think we will partner with CPDS with that, since they are the folks who are interacting and having that dialogue with the development community and have the pipeline, but we can certainly partner with them on that.
Yeah, and then also, I think related to this is how do we get more units? We've got vacant commercial space. How do we convert that to housing? And I think this body, or you as experts, we need a deeper discussion on this topic. Vacant commercial buildings is not good for anybody. It doesn't produce the job with the service. They write down their tax revenue, and so the city's not able to do as much programmatically because we have less from that building. But if we can get housing in there, it's hitting a lot of different needs and also creates impact tax for school development. So there's a lot of play that we need to be thinking about. How do we get that done? The last two comments I wanted to make are, and some of the talking to some of the area school communities, sometimes there's a need not just for a house, but social services and wraparound services. And I don't think we've had a serious conversation about, yeah, we're putting these up throughout the city, but what does that person need to succeed and thrive to the next level so that they can progress economically for their, that just in terms of navigation. So I wanted to raise that. That wraparound service is critical. And our schools are feeling it when we don't provide it. And the last thing to the comments of some of my colleagues, the experience in trying to get one of these or trying to get a home, a lot of people still don't know about MPDUs. There needs to be more education. And the county does have regular education sessions and clear information, I think, that we can add to our now new wonderful website to make that experience more easily understood and more people know about it. That's it for me. Thank you. Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I certainly support the comments of my colleagues. The workforce housing provision, they're getting the information out. All sounds great. I am mindful to the point I raised when I began rambling earlier. I guess we're work sessions. I don't know if I can actually make motions during work sessions. So if that's the case, I will defer. I did also hear from city manager that it sounds like a consultant will be hired more broadly to look at housing stuff. I'm open. I think that if it's my only point of difference, I think there was I don't know if this was a thought experiment about making a change and then study it 2 years after. I would want, before making a change, is to make sure we're as well informed as possible. My preference would be to a specific, consultant on this issue. I hear you and my colleague, deferring to city staff and their expertise about what we need and don't need. So I'm open. That's my preference, but I'll bring it up at the appropriate time, as I do recognize this is a work session. So I'll respect the forum.
Thank you, Councilmember Van Grack, and then Councilmember Shaw.
I would just like to suggest to Councilmember Miles, because I do definitely feel that consultant is necessary, and I heard what the city manager said. Perhaps a motion can be made to ensure that the housing consultant that we do hire specifically addresses the questions and data regarding these policies of inclusionary zoning that you want to address. And specifically, if it isn't addressed properly, then we can potentially hire another consultant. That way we ensure that we get the information we need. And if we don't, that would just be my suggestion to Councilmember Miles with regard to where he was going, and I agree with.
Councilmember Shaw.
I just also agree with my colleagues. I think that we do need a consultant to focus particularly on IZ. And I know that we're hiring a consultant around our needs assessment, but I think this is like a particular focused area. And I think this is like, considering this is the strongest area where we are producing affordable units, that we need to focus on this. So my preference would be for a consultant.
Councilman Valeri.
I think that, no, and I appreciate everybody's perspective on this. Mr. City Manager, we have not had a session or even a discussion on the upcoming housing needs assessment. We had one broadly on services needed in a grander scheme, but I would even hesitate to say that what we're going to get out of the housing needs assessment will not include the information that people are correctly requesting here, because I don't know what that matrix looks like. I do know that because it is within the HSAC purview, I would be more shocked than not that it would not include the information that we're looking for here. So I would not want to advance the expense of an additional consultant. If we have one that is, an RFP has been put out, or we have somebody in place already that will be getting us to that same point. So I just want to throw that out there, that we're working in an information vacuum. So it's possible that, you know, this is going to be included. And just super quickly, and thank you to Madam Mayor for bringing up the impact taxes. I think that is one of the biggest challenges here in the city, is that we work very hard to increase our impact taxes to invest in our schools, and then ultimately that decision is not in our hands. And the schools that are most in need do not get that. So I'm just going to put a flag on that, because it is a frustration of mine, especially given recent events. So yeah, going back to the housing needs assessment, we don't know what we don't know up here, and I would say get the information of what is occurring right now, and then we can make a decision from there.
Thank you. I support my colleagues in saying we need the data. I would like to see how you plan to get it. It would have to be through the housing assessment, and if it's not there, to my colleague's point, we're going to need someone to dive deep. And how you get that done, I know that you will figure that out. But I heard some things from my colleagues on the housing needs assessment. Yes, inclusionary zoning with MPDUs, but we also need to understand that MPDUs will not create that more deeply affordable naturally. And so you are looking at LIHTC, you are exploring impact on vouchers, and also thinking about our nonprofit players, because they are providing significant numbers of units as well. So maybe you have that covered in the housing needs assessment, and that's why it makes sense to explore that together. I'd love to hear how you're going to proceed on the housing needs assessment. Is when and is update going to be shared with the mayor and council? You don't have to answer all that now, but I think that's something that we should learn more about, the scope and timing. Okay, Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did have a question for either the city clerk or the city attorney. Are we able to make motions during work sessions? I thought not, but she said no. Okay. Yes, ma'am. I'll come back to it at an appropriate time. But again, as my colleague appropriately pointed out, defer to staff's judgment.
Mr. Mihalik.
So when we have broad discussions and work sessions, I don't need direction from council through a formal motion, voice vote, to get direction from all of you. So yeah, but yes, you can make a motion and take a vote on things absolutely during work session. It's just not always necessary for me to get direction. Like tonight, I have a page full of notes, to get us moving forward from work session to our next steps. particularly related to our housing needs assessment. I heard loud and clear about the need for additional data, particularly as we think about different options for this. So I heard that loud and clear. But yes, the mayor and council can make motions in a work session. It's just not absolutely necessary to give me direction. Thank you.
Mr. Mihalik, just to ease the concerns of my colleagues in terms, will you be sharing some information with us on the housing needs assessment, the approach, and how you're planning to get that additional data and analysis so we're not making mistakes on policy as much as we can and are going with as much evidence-based data as possible
Yes.
to inform our policy? So you're going to come back to us,
Yes.
and then there may be an opportunity to say, we want something different. Does that work for you?
It works for me.
Okay, all right. We're
Thank you.
committing that to each other. Okay. To our DHCD team, is there anything else that you would like clarifying information? I know we gave you probably more than you anticipated.
Not at this point, but thank you.
Okay. All right. So now we're moving on to our mock agenda. Does anyone have comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none. Old new business. Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Valeri?
Madam Mayor, I move that we adjourn for the evening.
Councilmember Shaw?
A second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. And I want to acknowledge that we are ahead of schedule. Thank you, team.
Notwithstanding our
Yeah, I know.